I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The roll for the City Council meeting of November 28, 2022. Councilor McCauley.
Here.
Councilor Preston.
Here.
Councilor Vogel.
Present.
Councilor Wallace.
Here.
Councilor Wright.
Yeah.
Councilor Zede.
Here.
Councilor Cameron.
Here.
Councilor Donahue.
Present.
Councilor Khan.
Present.
Councilor Lane.
Here.
And Councilor Shan. We are all here, one remote. Well, we have three late files at this point. We have Communication 452, which is a letter requesting the Boy Scouts be able to put out 2 tables on invitation nights. And we have Appointment 359, which is Robert Ulig, 174 Merrimack Street, to the Tree Commission until 12/15/2025. And we have on your desk, you'll see a very late file, Communication 451, which is a communication from Councilor Vogel with respect to the tax rate discussion.
Motion to waive the rules, to accept the late files, and also to apply an emergency to 452 and approve it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that second was by,
Councilor Cameron, I think.
thank you.
Or Donahue.
For me. You got it for me.
Was close.
Roll call on that motion to accept the late files and to add an emergency preamble, Communication 452. Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Clerk Jones, would you think it appropriate to move 395 and 396 up before public comment?
I do. That would be the emergency preamble and the resolution itself. So they would be taken out of order. They are now in with the other orders. There's 4 orders.
May I be recognized? Yeah. Thank you, Council President. Sorry, I do want to make sure, if it's okay, I will check in with the coach. Is it okay, or do you want me to wait for some other members? You're good. You're good? All right, okay. Then I will support that.
Motion to approve both collectively?
Second.
Roll call.
No, there's,
So approve and remove and move them up.
Yes.
Okay,
well, I was thinking then you
And
would
then
speak.
Councilor Khan will read the proclamation.
okay. So on that roll call, moving and approving for both the resolution, emergency preamble, Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
And Councilor Shan. Okay, both are on the floor.
Councilor Khan, would you be so kind as to read the resolution?
Yes, so, yeah, great. Thank you very much, Council President. So just so folks know, we moved up some new business that we wanted to make sure as a city council we could collectively recognize the achievements that were done by the Newburyport High School varsity boys soccer team, who are all here, and it's great to see them with their coaches. Before we get and read right into the recognition, I just want to make a couple of statements about kind of what really resonates in the story when I heard it from others, other parents, is that as city councilors, we do a lot of approval of funds for our parks. We approve things for the high school, we approve things for all of the school, and as well as the city departments such as Newburyport Youth Services. And an amazing aspect is a lot of this team that we're going to be recognizing have been working and playing together since many of the programs the city has helped support. And I think there's a real amazing story about, it's not just about celebrating a victory, an amazing accomplishment, but also how the community in itself can embrace everything we've done to support it, from actions that we do here in the council chambers as well. And so for me, it was really amazing to see how this community, this city, has things like the East Coast Soccer Association or Academy, as well as Newburyport Youth Soccer Association, and then we have our fields. And where else can kids enjoy and grow to love something, a sport, and then have such an amazing accomplishment as a result? So with that said, I want to really commend not just the team here, but their family, their parents, and the community at whole in how we've been able to embrace this. So who you have here are the team members. I believe there's 30 in the roster, and we have their coaches, and Coach Sean Blue, so I think many of us know if we've ever had our kids play soccer, and we have the other assistant coaches here as well. So with that said, can I read it from yours, since I have not brought this up yet? Or if it's written out, I can. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much. So let me go ahead and read what we're calling our resolution for today. Whereas the Newburyport High School Athletics Department has continued its outstanding success to achieve winning seasons in sports such as tennis, soccer, track and field, and I know I'm probably missing some, but there's been a tremendous success seen from Newburyport High School Athletics Department. But whereas the 2022-2023 Newburyport High School boys soccer team has won MIAA Division III All-State, capturing the boys program first ever All-State championship with an impressive undefeated record, which I really want to focus on. Undefeated, 23 wins, no ties. Amazing. And whereas the Clippers won the Cape Ann League title as well as the ALS Cup while allowing only 5 goals for the entire season and scoring an impressive 66 goals. And whereas for the group of juniors and seniors, and I believe sophomores, did I hear there's a couple of sophomores or freshmen, that's it, that have played together for over a decade through programs that started for some at the NYS, and whereas the Newburyport High School soccer team has also worked together in giving back to our community by being youth kind of soccer coaches, maybe junior coaches for the Newburyport Youth Soccer Association. And whereas Coach Sean Blue and his staff, including varsity assistant Matt Salazzo and JV coaches Ben Lang and John Surzik, my apologies on how I pronounce that, have earned our sincere congratulations for producing such an outstanding team that provide inspiring role models for the youth of our city. Now, therefore, the Newburyport City Council hereby formally resolves to congratulate and recognize the considerable achievements resulting from the tremendous hard work and dedication of all the players and outstanding coaches. And I'm going to add also parents who have done so much for these kids. And with that said, it is signed and actually brought to you by all of the city councilors who you see right here. I am just the one reading it, and as well as the mayor, Sean Reardon. So that's it. So thank you and congratulations.
What's the public Wi-Fi password?
The mayor was sick today, so that will be taken care of. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Good job,
thank
everybody.
you.
Nice job.
Congratulations.
And don't, let's want to sit through the rest of our meeting. You probably don't want to.
Good job, Jill. How many goals did Jill score?
Yeah. And maybe if a picture, get a quick picture of these.
I'll tell you. If we
Did you guys want to come here? We could get a picture.
How bad my profile is.
I can speak louder, I think, anyways. I have to say it's a very proud moment for myself. I've been in Newburyport for 22 years. I've seen all the hard work the community has done with Newburyport Youth Services, Newburyport Youth Soccer Association, and just the fields and stuff that we have to support our program has been fantastic. And my kids both went through the school systems here, and had them, be part of this too. Like it's not just the kids right now in here; it's the grounds that we set up going back to when these kids were 6 years old. Other kids played, including my friend Mr. Wright over here, and other people like that have been part of this program. So it's awesome stuff, and to have this accumulate with a state championship with 23 wins, it's a lot about our community, a lot about our program. Thank you very much for the support. We appreciate it.
Very nice. Nice trophy. Good night. Thank you for coming. Good night, everybody. Congratulations. Good job. Amazing. Sorry?
It is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I think Jill was on the soccer team. She was sitting right in the middle there. It's hard to differentiate if she was.
So, we're gonna have public comment now. No public comment inside. I see one hand up to the Zoom, and that's it. So, Owen Smith, you are it for public comment. Name and address.
Yeah, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Owen Smith, 175 Square Avenue, resident. First, just before I speak, I just want to mention I always check the city council packet. Like the Friday prior to the meeting, it was up, but it disappeared sometime between this weekend and today. Kind of shame on me for not saving it, but it is helpful to have online just so I can follow along when some changes like this happen. I wanted to address the agenda item regarding the status of the Parks Department. You know, there was a letter that I submitted a couple weeks ago, and I just wanted to point out a positive outcome. I feel like people that I talk to see I'm kind of doom and gloom a lot, but I think there was a positive development that happened. The current Parks Manager, Mr. Michael Hennessy, recently completed the Certified Playground Safety Inspector course. I think it's a positive for the city. It's an important task that they should be performing. There was a vacancy for a period of time over the summer where there was no person on staff that had that certification. And, you know, hearing from Mr. Hennessy, it sounds like he really recognizes the importance of this role and, you know, some of the vulnerabilities the city has. So I hope that the city gives the Parks Manager all the resources he needs to be successful at this endeavor and improve the safety and condition of our park. Like I said, Mr. Hennessy takes this task seriously. I have no doubt that he actually has a high level of care for our city's parks. And, you know, just to summarize, you know, we need to be sure these critical tasks in the Parks Department, whether it's safety or operations, are managed effectively. Placing the burden on one person is concerning, and it will leave the city vulnerable to failure if there are no redundancies in place. And then the second item, if I have another minute, would be...
You have 20 seconds.
Say again?
You have 20 seconds.
Okay. Well, I support the City Council committee reorganization. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. All right, with that being said, we will close public comment. There is no mayor's comment tonight. As the mayor is out sick this evening, I believe we all received documents on our desks. So, Councilor Zeid.
Motion to take out of order Order 391, 392, and transfer 144 from Budget and Finance, please.
Second. No, go right to it.
All those in favor, roll call.
Have we done the consent agenda?
We're going to do this first.
Okay.
Motion to take out of order.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a motion to take out of order Order 391, 392, and a transfer, which transfer?
144.
144. First and seconded. Council McCauley?
Yes.
Council Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Council Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zeid?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
And Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Zeid.
Okay. Motion to approve collectively the three items, 391, 92, and 144.
Second.
Thank you. So let me try my best to condense this conversation as much as possible. So I was preparing for tonight to give the committee report, and so I thought where I'd start is just a really quick rundown not really necessarily for the benefit of counselors, but just for others to understand how we got here and what we actually have in play and what we don't. So this story rewinds back to last November when we have our joint meeting with the school committee and we start the budget. Fast forward to May, we go through two processes roughly in the spring where we do a budget and we do a capital improvement plan, and ultimately we come to a budget. And we did that with some changes, with some amendments. And that is the bill that's due. That is how much we must collect or have in order to be able to pay the commitments that we agreed to make. And that was a vote of the city council at that time. So we're now here, and a couple things have happened in the interim. One is the assessor continues to work throughout basically all the time to continuously assess properties in accordance with the state law and DOR regulations and all the things that go into that. And that basically gives us a basis for all the properties in the city. So we have a bill that's due and we have a basis of assessments. And now we are in the fall. We have free cash is now certified, meaning that we closed our books in July. We determined the so-called excess free cash. It went to the state. They took a look at the books and says, yep, this looks good. This is how much free cash you have. So at this point, we cannot play with the budget. We have already decided what the bill is going to be. We cannot play with assessments. That's not in our jurisdiction anyways. That's what the assessor does. And there is a process if the homeowner or property owner disagrees with the assessor. That's called an abatement. So those two are fixed goalposts. We only have two things that are in play today. One is the tax rate shift, which means if there are 5 people sitting at the table to pay this bill, apportioning that between the 5 people instead of just splitting it, dividing it by 5, we could, as the tax shift implies, basically split the burden in an uneven way between those parties. That's what a tax shift is. And the second is we have this free cash money available to us. So essentially think of that as money we have left over in the bank from last year that we could use to help pay some of that bill to defray how much the 5 people who are at the table now need to pay. That's the context for this. That's the shortest way, and I was able to figure out while I was doing all sorts of things this weekend to explain it. So now that you understand, hopefully, and folks understand what's going on, I'm going to now give you a quick rundown of the budget and finance meeting. So this is the chart that we focused on from last week in committee. Ethan Manning, our finance director, put this together and was kind enough to put the top here. So the reason these 3 orders are coming together is because they actually are all tied together. It's not, we can do them sequentially, but essentially they come together, and making a decision on one may predicate decisions on the other in order to come to a number. So first thing is how do you read this chart? So here on the left, you have the residential versus the so-called CIP, commercial industrial. This first column is the shift. So a zero shift means an even tax rate for all properties. Everybody pays the same rate. And then these columns here represent different utilizations of free cash. So this is actually deciding on 2 things. Transfer 144, you can think of as being the across, and then the tax rate, which is 391, also called the factor, is the column here. So what I'm going to do is just say, to start, assuming you use no free cash and you did no shift, residential, this is the average tax bill, would go up by 7.3% for residential and would go down by 7.5% for the average commercial bill. That's if you use no free cash and you don't do any shifting of the rate whatsoever. If you go all the way to the other end, just for discussion, and you shifted the max, which is a half point, and you used the full amount of free cash shown on this, doesn't mean it's all free cash, just as far as this chart goes, you end up at the opposite corner, and you'd be able to get a reduction of residential by 1.4%, and then obviously the shift is quite dramatic here if you were to go all the way and you have a 35% increase. So now you understand the 2 bounds. So this is what the committee discussed at length last week, and we kind of went around a little bit on, there's policy question here, like what do you want to do? There's numerical questions and so forth. And in the end, we talked about what does shifting the CIP mean. We had a public comment from some folks who couldn't speak tonight, but some folks who did as well. And in the end, we sort of ended up trying to focus on first selecting a row to go across and then thinking about how far across that row to go. And this dashed box reflects the mayor's recommendation, the administration's recommendation, which was to do a 0.1 shift, I'm going to call it, for the tax rate and utilization of $401,000 and $400,001, just call it for even numbers, resulting in a 5.0% increase for the average residential and a 0.8% increase for the average CIP. through the committee's discussions, made a recommendation, which is the red box, which is the same shift, but is a slightly higher utilization of free cash. And that's why all of the items coming out of committee were amended. So just so you understand why the amendment was made, one, to support the higher level of free cash, as well as to just make all the numbers work together, because they again have a symbiotic relationship. We also in committee had a discussion about stabilization fund. We had other free cash transfers that kind of mixed into the conversation. But those basically are the bounds of the conversation, as best as I can summarize it. The committee did discuss this. Actually, we had almost a full contingent because it was committee of the whole, so many of you were there, but I'm just trying to summarize for everybody's benefit, and landed on using this 553 number from free cash and the CIP shift of 0.1. I don't know that I could summarize more from the conversation, but it was a ranging conversation, and I think the discussion points were around, some of the things you heard, and what is the impact on businesses, what's the impact on residential properties, what does this mean for the city going forward, what will it mean for the average tax bill, and so that's, I think, what I can do with it. I hope that helps. I'm happy to answer questions, and I saw, Ethan Manning, I think, is here in the Zoom. But I did want to address one last thing, and I'll look to Ethan to correct me if I'm wrong, or Jill, but I don't believe we have any leeway on the time. So Julie is not here, but she is unable, they can't produce the tax bills if we don't set the tax rate. So I wouldn't say that, the world would end, but it would certainly throw them off, is what I've heard in previous years. So Jill, if you want to speak to that, because the timing question I'm sure will come up.
If we don't have the bills mailed out by December 31st, any payment on taxes won't be due until May 1st instead of February 1st. So there wouldn't be any money coming into the city up until May 1st. So it's very important that we, get the bills in the mail by December 31st. And we still have a couple of processes to do. Once you do approve a rate, then we have to submit everything to the Department of Revenue to get certification on the tax rate also. So that takes a little while. And then getting it up and running on our billing system and sending it and getting them mailed out, it takes a little time too. So there is a time crunch.
Thank you.
We'd like a vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I see Councilor Preston has her hand up, then I see Councilor Khan, and then Councilor Vogel. Councilor Preston.
Yeah, hi, thank you. So I understand what was just said, but I don't have a lot of insight into what that timeline is. So the question I would ask in maybe a more plain way is, if we were to delay this vote 2 weeks till our next meeting, could that be absorbed in the timeline and still be able to get the tax bills out in time for January 1st?
I'm going to say, from my opinion, no. That isn't enough time to get everything done.
So Connie, I don't know if you heard her, but the tax assessor just said no.
Yes, I did hear that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Councilor Khan.
Great, thank you, Council President. First of all, thank you to the Chair of Budget and Finance. I thought that was a great summary, and I actually like the comparison, 5 people, and how do you get the burden passed along on this interesting situation. So I guess I'm going to maybe take a couple of steps back in my trying to understand the ramifications of going down this path. Our committee had a good conversation, and I think one of the things that I've asked before in past budget discussions when it comes to setting the tax rate is, the fact, why is there a same, why are they at the same, and there is no shift between residential and commercial. And the Director of Finance had always said that Massachusetts Department of Revenue has kind of a rule of thumb. It's not anything mandatory, but there's a guidance that if there are 20% of the kind of assessed participation in your community that's C&I, commercial, then you would tend to, then it would make a justification or some, it makes sense, based on that kind of the burden or whatever you might want to call it, the contribution from that sector on the community. And at this point we are 11%, so we don't quite meet that. So my question is, well, why are we considering this? And one of the things that and I don't think I heard the chair mention this, but I could talk about it. It's in the letter, is really about the assessments and where things ended up coming through in assessments. And residential home assessments have taken a huge increase from past years, significant enough that when there was that comparison between residential and commercial, commercial came in much less, to the point that they actually were seeing a decrease from the previous year, or from the previous year of their property taxes. So the impetus was that comparison based on appraisals of these sectors. Thinking more about it, it makes me, I will say that while I supported it out of committee, under the guise of trying to make these numbers work and see how could we get a fair kind of increase across the sectors, and what would make it, what would be that shift to do to make it at least 0%, meaning not a decrease. This would be the kind of perfect, maybe, compromise or relationship. In thinking more about it and in looking at past kind of efforts that we've done, as well as looking at communities that do have differences, you know, and that's a nice thing that the Massachusetts DOR website has too, is you could look and see the total number of communities that have a shift and those that are at the same. So 241, looking at the 2022, 241 communities have no shift at all. So it's a single value, whereas you see the rest, 101, have the shift. I didn't get a chance to go through to see what type of businesses are there. But in talking now with a lot of the small business folks, and actually hearing and reading the emails that I've gotten, a couple of things are clear to me. And I think they were said during public comment. One is, you know, identification, notification, kind of talking about this, you know, in a forum where everyone could hear the reasons and why maybe might this be considered, or what are some alternatives. I think that would be helpful, and I don't know if I don't think we've done that. The second thing, though, that came about is how much can people pay, and when you look at small businesses, it gets passed into their leases. How important are small businesses to our community? And, you know, we walk around our downtown or even other parts of our city, and we don't see so much of like corporation type of businesses. There are, at least the places I like to go and frequent, I think many people, are those that are just small local businesses. And I know we just had Shop Local Saturday, and, you know, we just have one day that happened and really emphasized, but for those who worked with like the PTO or any NEF, you see how much they've given to our community. You know, we want to see, I think, these businesses stay. I would like to see them stay. So I feel like this, you know, while it seems like, okay, we're here, this is an unusual situation, we have this kind of appraisal aspect that's huge disparity between residential and commercial, this makes sense now. I worry about this making sense right now and how that may look next year, and are we setting up some type of precedence that, let's say next year residential appraisals are super low and commercial super high. Are we then going to say residential should take a bigger hit to compensate for commercial? I think if we did that, we wouldn't be reelected. So I feel like if we're going to try to explain the rationale and maybe the future thinking of the impact of the rationale, I really love the fact that there is the Economic Development Committee, and that maybe the consultant can look at this. And maybe, because I don't think this is going to change. And I have no way of knowing, but one of the things we learned in committee as well is that they're looking at past and not current, because you can't see what next year is going to look like. But those are, am I saying that wrong? You said it better, but basically we don't know what next year is going to look like, which is going to set the next year's budget and as well as the next year's tax rate. So I am not going to support this, because the more I think about it, it's not sitting well with me. If we were to table, though, and I'm just going to play that out, I know Jill's probably very stressed hearing that, but if we were to, and if the consultant, and I think, like I said, I just heard that for the first time from the public comment person, that there is a meeting or maybe a report or maybe they're putting something together, I would want to hear that as well. And the last point I'm going to say before I sit down is that I also would be eager to hear the implication of what we are doing here on on setting the budget for next year. And I feel like that's been said a lot. When we approved the budget in June, and I know, and the chair has said this many times, that budget approval in June already tells us what we are going to be setting now. So when we are doing this, I'm surprised, since we approved the budget in June, we knew how much we needed. Sometimes I don't like the fact that we just get this now. There could have been maybe conversations with the business community in advance, because we already knew what we need to get. I understand that what we may not have known so much, and I'm not sure when the appraisal information comes through, and maybe that's a question. When do we find that out? Because that could also be the timing aspect.
Historically, it's October.
So October. So
And we'd have to wait till free cash is
certified. So just to explain, if anyone is wondering, because I was wondering that too, if we were to entertain this, maybe having a conversation before we need to get to these pieces of information does it make sense? And I think that's one thing we're learning here, that it is a good conversation to bring in multiple people, as well as the business community and chamber as well, because this is huge and an important thing. Thank you.
So it's Councilor Vogel and then Councilor Zede.
Thank you. I do have a few things, and I'm wondering if we want to, procedurally, do we want to think about tabling it, or do we want to continue with?
Could I interject? I know we moved both Order 391 and 392 in transfer up on the agenda. But in terms of what's on the floor for discussion, I think there should be a motion at least on Order 391.
I made a motion to approve all three.
You did?
Collectively.
Okay.
Seconded, to get something on the floor to discuss.
Fine.
So they are all.
Okay. So just for the record then, 391 is that the city adopt a residential factor of
0.9880.
9880 for fiscal year 2023. And then for the record, the other order, which is 392, is that a tax rate of 1064 per thousand for residential and open space be set, and 11.85 per thousand for commercial industrial be set.
And then lastly is 144 is 553,602 from free cash. Those are the three.
Thank you.
So may I speak procedurally? Sure. Thank you. So procedurally, I'm wondering if given the input from the public and from the Chamber of Commerce, if we want to, and from the council at large, if we want to consider a vote on tabling, or shall we go through all of this discussion and then perhaps consider a vote on tabling? And then also I have a consideration as to whether or not we should consider all of these together or in some sequence, because I think that there's some debate to be had to do this one way or the other. I know that the Budget and Finance Committee has come out with their recommendation, but that may not necessarily be the recommendation for all of us on the floor. So I'm wondering how we would do that procedurally.
Councilor Zede?
Can I respond?
You bet.
So one is I would ask not to make a motion to table, because it's a non-debatable motion, and I think we have more conversation to have a little bit. To your second question, we can do them separately. This would be the order they have to be done in. Number one is we need to send the tax factor. Number two is we need to determine the amount of free cash. And then the third one becomes arithmetic. So it's just math to determine the rate. So we need to decide which column you want to be in first, then which row, and then we would have a tax rate, which is just simply math between the two. In committee, we tried to separate them a little bit, but people kept wanting to pick a box on this, and it was easier for the purpose of discussion to make the decision on both at the same time. But procedurally, if you want, the motion was just made because we can't have a math mismatch between these. We can't set the rate at like $5 and then not use the appropriate amount of free cash. Then Ethan will really have a heart attack. So we have to make the math work, but that's the order they would need to be done in.
Okay. Councilor Vogel?
Continue. Well, that kind of cuts our, I guess then the discussion would be amendments, maybe, I guess is what we'd have to do. We'd have to amend what is, okay, so we'll do it that way. May I continue? Then I have the debate. So I put on your, on the desk some calculations that I had done while at Thanksgiving with 2, 4, 5, and 6-year-old boys. And I'm sorry that I didn't get it out to you sooner. But I went through this, and instead of looking at an average taxpayer, I looked at the median of a taxpayer, which means that half of the community is, their homes are worth less than the top half. And what that does is that it sort of splits us into a community of value. And I'm looking at what the benefit is of this tax cut, if you will. And first I want to talk about, I don't do that on this machine. I want to talk about the free cash addition. So that there's this tax burden on these two different sets of property owners. In short, by adding the free cash to the shift, if we're going to go ahead with this and to the shift, the single-family homeowner receives a tax benefit, the one that's below the median, of a total of $59.68 for the year. $59. That's the average that the below the median is going to receive. It's $59 for the year. Now, on the other side of the coin, those that are above the median, in the higher priced homes, and the homes that have been remodeled, et cetera, that are been assessed higher, those people receive $104. So if our concern is about the homeowner, particularly the homeowner as we assume is on fixed income, and it's an interesting topic, fixed income. At the age of 70, I now have a fixed income of my Social Security, which is really interesting to see that check arrive after all these years. I also have other income, and obviously, and I'll speak to that as well about the split because I'm a business owner. But fixed income individuals are going to receive an over 8% raise this year. I'm not to judge that, hey, get along, you're going to get an 8% raise. It's only going to cost you $50 a year more in taxes. But I'm just pointing out that the savings for that below median taxpayer, the one that we're really concerned about, the one that lives in the below median price range, is only $59. And the benefit to the other is twice that. So I'll leave that at that. I have plenty more data that I put on there that you can look at, but I'll leave it to that. But I want to talk about one more thing about free cash. Despite the loud and continuing assertion that free cash is a result of overtaxation, it simply is not that. It is not overtaxation. We're handed a balanced budget every year, and that budget is balanced on a conservative estimate of our revenue. Be it tax revenue, be it new growth, whatever might be coming in, it's a conservative effort. And on the other side of that, on the expenditure side, the professionals that work in this city are professional, dedicated department heads, work out a budget of expenditures. And they present that to us, and we go through it, sometimes line by line, eating pizza at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we go through this budget. And we approve the budget. And that budget is balanced. There's not a line in there that says, free cash when you're done. What happens is that at the end of the fiscal year, we look to see how much came in and how much was spent and what is left over. And generally speaking, there is more there because new growth, more development, higher assessments because of remodels, et cetera, et cetera. So that free cash is not over taxation. It's not that we taxed higher. We simply taxed conservatively, and the revenue stream was higher. So that's free cash, and to call it overtaxation is a real stretch. I'm going to continue, if I may, to the tax split. So this is unprecedented, as the Councilor at Large mentioned. Throughout the Commonwealth, and certainly throughout this community, the 14 years I've been on City Council, we've never considered it, and I think it was back in 1986 when it happened. I have a number of concerns. First of all, disclosure. I own a business in town. I pay rent. I have a lease that I have many more years on. My lease is not triple net. I will not be affected by this debate or by this tax rate. My rent is fixed. but I've talked to plenty of other businesses in town, and you all received that letter from David Hall. I wish I could read it. He nails it. Businesses are hurting in this community. I can tell you, I talk to them every single day. The Chamber of Commerce speaks to it. Plenty of businesses have come in here and spoke about it. There's no reason to put this burden on the commercial business owners because the residential homeowner house is worth more because everybody desires to live in Newburyport and interest rates were at 3%. I mean, that's what happened, right? Everybody wants to live here. The commercial the assessment didn't go up because they're still struggling. They're still coming through. It doesn't make any sense at all. The burden on the taxpayer is not great. It is there. There's no two ways about it. But when it comes to what we need to do for this community, we don't necessarily need to cut taxes. We need to do what the community wants in a fair and equitable manner. And cutting these taxes in this way is neither fair nor is it equitable. In terms of residential, those that are on the higher assessed homes that are up here get a bigger tax cut. Those that are down here get a smaller tax cut. And in terms of what we can do with that free cash, instead of $400,000 to provide this tax cut, what can we do? Well, since all the way back for 5 years, we spent over $1 million in free cash on this community. We have spent it on, guess what? What's the number one thing? Anybody want to guess? Streets and sidewalks. That's what our community wants. Our community wants us to fix our infrastructure. I would like to add to solidify our water. I would also like to add fire and safety, which we're doing as well. So we have all of these things that we need to get done, and we've managed to spend over $1 million, I think it was $1.5 million in the last 5 years of free cash. This doesn't make any sense. I would like to, maybe at this point in time, motion that we set the tax rate at 1 and at $10.67? I would like to make that motion, or shall we keep the debate?
Amendment, that's an amendment, right?
That would be an amendment, or we'll keep the debate going?
I think Councilor Zede had his hand up, but would like to.
I'll take the motion back.
Okay.
Second.
Oh, yeah, no, I took it back.
Oh, you took it back.
I'll wait,
Okay.
I'll yield for the moment and let it go around.
Right, for those that want to continue the discussion. So Councilor Zede, you had your hand up, and then Councilor Donahue, and then Councilor Lang.
Okay, thank you. I just trying to process the numbers. So I guess a couple of things. I wanted to share my thoughts. The first one is that, and I thank the at-large councilor for bringing it up, this is an anomaly year because of the rate of change. It's not the nominal assessments themselves. What happened is, due to COVID, I think in large part and other things, residential has skyrocketed, roughly 18% increase in the average property value, whereas commercial has not gone down in its assessments, but it's gone up at a much more modest rate of 2.6%. So that delta, the difference between the rates of change, is what is causing this weird anomaly. And here's what's kind of giving me a hard time is that these numbers here on the screen make a very compelling case to go with the box with the dashes on it, black or red, whichever one you prefer, for this year. They really do, because if you look at it, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a decrease of 7.5% for the average commercial versus having a, say, 7.3 if you did the 0-0. That's why I pointed out that it doesn't. It's not a compelling case. It makes more sense because equity can be measured in more than one way. We could measure it by the nominal dollars. We can measure it by the percent of change. We can measure it in numerous ways. So it just depends on which way you want to look at it. However, the analysis I've been thinking about over the last week is that one of the reasons a split tax rate is dangerous and is difficult to come to is that you can set yourself into a never-ending spiral where you can't undo it even if you want. And, I won't put Jill on the spot, but my assessment is that next year when the tax rate comes up and we're looking at 2022 data, because usually the lag is 1 year for assessments, we are very likely to have this same race condition where residential the curve looks like this, and commercial's just on that very nice normal 2.5–3% from days gone by now increase. So next year you'll be sitting here and saying, well, we wanted to go back to 1 this year, again, being in the future, but you mathematically won't be able to. And in fact, if you try to, it will be very painful for the residential because you'll be having this argument in reverse. You'll have those 5 people sitting around the table and saying, well, you two paid less last year, but now you have to pay not just more to bring you level, but you have to come all the way back up to make up the gap that essentially was. So it's comparing the decision today, and I've heard, this is a very complex thing for whatever reason. Municipal finance is completely insane, even to me, and I come from a finance background, but it makes no sense. The order of operations is very confusing because you decide how much you're going to spend first, and you later decide how to collect it. The timing is really driven a lot by state things. It's the DOR, it's the certification of free cash, it's the assessment schedule. So it's not like we could be having a tax rate discussion in August if we wanted to. Maybe we could have the budding conversation of it and say, I think we can see what's coming down the pipe, and next year I think we should try to at least see down the tunnel where things are going. So long story short is that, the long-term outlook financially, numerically is not good. And lastly, on that same concept is that you really have to think about this from a public policy perspective. Newburyport is not commercially strong, unfortunately. I mean, our numbers show that we're 90 and 10, 90%-ish residential, 10% commercial. So what is the impact of doing something like this? You could obviously diminish the remaining 10%. Frankly, we've already done things to diminish that by rezoning commercial areas for residential just because of the added pressure for housing. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that's what's happened. So there are lots of factors in play, and I understand the chamber and the business's trepidation because I think they're not looking at again, I disagree with many of the arguments on both sides, but looking at the numbers here, this is okay, 0.6% and 4.8, but that's the percentage change. The problem is setting that future. Now you can never undo it because mathematically it would never be possible, and politically it would be impossible to do. Last thing I want to say on this is, as the chair, I'm asking that we don't table it. I think we need to, this is a public policy decision, and the work that's being done by EDAC and others is very valuable to us, but to me, it's a longer range. We just have to have a vote. We just have to make a decision, and I don't think 2 weeks is going to create any new information. This is a policy decision. It's a hard one. I understand completely why the mayor did what he did, and he looked at these numbers. I don't think this is an irrational thing, as Councilor Vogel put it in committee. It's very defensible, completely logical, and now we're just down to brass tacks. So what I would like to ask is if there is an amendment to maybe the first amendment is just to set the factor back to 1. And let's just take a vote on that so that you don't make me try and crunch numbers all the way down the line. Once we have a factor set, then our column is fixed, and then we can walk down and debate how much free cash do you want to use, if any. And I know there's differing opinions. Some may want more or less. But just like I did in committee, I'm going to try and push us to, get something done here, but so we don't go. So I don't want to take the amendment from you, but I would motion to make the factor 1 and just stop there. And and just see if that can be debated. That's order number 391. Currently it's 0.9880, would become 1.00, which is the even. And then if we can get a second, then we can decide that. And I'm not trying to take away from the free cash debate. We will have to have that too.
So before you make that amendment,
Yes.
I know Councilor Donahue wanted to speak,
Sure.
and then Councilor Lane, and then Councilor Cameron. So why don't we let everybody who wants to speak
Sure.
this first time around, let's go in and have that discussion, and then we'll go around and do the amendments. So Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President, and thank you to everyone that has commented so far. There's a lot to consider and absorb. I do want to just come right out of the gate, and after a lot of thought and a lot of absorbing of everything that was discussed at last week's Budget and Finance meeting, and of course the many, many, many emails that I received since then, primarily from the business community and small business owners. When I decided to run for council, I did it because I wanted to bring a voice to the council that will be heard, and that is the vulnerable population. In my experience, throughout my life, I've always worked for small businesses. I speak for small businesses, I speak for small business workers, and I certainly speak for people that live on fixed incomes and paycheck to paycheck. So having said that, I don't support the split tax rate. I don't think it's equitable at this time to put a burden onto really our most vulnerable business community members, which is our small mom and pop businesses. They cannot stay afloat with any more burdens brought upon them. While they don't pay the same level of, maybe use the same level of services as residents, they also pay a lot more in things that residents don't pay for, such as payroll taxes, insurance for all their employees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Running a small business, you're lucky to give yourself a paycheck. And as we've heard from some business owners, they've cut their own paychecks. And if they're doing that, what does that say for what they're able to do for their employees? So we know the trickle-down effect is only going to shutter the doors of many of our unique mom and pop businesses, galleries, restaurants, you name it. It is what makes our downtown thriving. That is not to dismiss the concerns of people that live here and own property that they live in, and that this would be a burden for, even in a small increment, because I do disagree that $50, $100, it does make a difference to somebody on a fixed income. And regardless of the COLA increase for people on Social Security, on those fixed incomes, I don't think it's appropriate that the cost of living is what it is, and it's going up and up and up for everything across the board, that we should come in and say, well, we're going to take that because we need it. No, they need it for the groceries, they need it for the gas, they need it for their utilities, heating, everything. So I do support, however, the utilization of free cash to provide some relief to residential property owners. If there was a way to do it that was more equitable so that folks at the lower end were seeing more relief, because it does truly make that difference for them, I would really prefer to see something like that. But having said all of that, I think with some amendments, there's a way to get through tonight with a fair way to pay our bills and not shift the burden and not shift the tax rate and not put that burden onto, let's just face it, it's not going to go to the big property owner businesses. It's going to come down to the people paying at the register, the employees at the register, and those business owners. So I will just sit down with that, and I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Donahue. Councilor Lane.
Lots of great points. I agree with both councilors at large and the Ward 2 councilor and the sentiments of various things they've said. Where I'm at right now, and it was brought up by the councilor at large, where are we going to be at next year? Next year, we know, and Joe, you can verify that assessments are a trail. The assessments are going up even higher.
I can tell you the percentage that I'm looking at that I'm starting with is about the same as I started with last year. So I don't know, it depends on building permit activity too, because that will add to it.
So the market temperature is what drives that, right? So the market's way up. The market's way up. I'm in real estate, I see it, it's gonna go back up. Where my head's at right now, and I'll point out where I'm thinking I wanna be, I definitely wanna use more free cash, and I wanna land here, and I wanna land there. So using the 858 brings us down to the 4.3 and the 0.1, which I think is a lot more palatable for people on both ends. It's a little bit of an increase on the commercial side, but yes, the commercial side is the scary part, and I agree with many of these business owners that are facing these increases. They have to either increase their prices, lay people off, or go out of business with any increase. An increase on the residential side, though a lot of people are in fixed incomes, it's proportionate. So their values have gone up, even though their property values aren't going to be the same. So the delta between the property value and the assessment is going to be less than some of the other homes that are assessed much higher, and they'll get a huge amount if they were to resell. So for me, those are the two boxes I want to see. I would love to use more free cash. I think this is the year right now that's the most important with the price of everything that's going up, going into a recession. Give everybody a break this year. We know assessments are gonna go up next year, naturally with the prices, and prices aren't going anywhere in Newburyport. They're just, people will pay it. A lot of it's cash, so it's not people that are taking advantage of low interest rates. The low interest rates helps them take their equity out, but it's not stopping the masses from coming here and spending millions of dollars on homes that are assessed much less. So with that, that's where my head's at. I want to see more free cash go out, bring the boxes down, make it a 0.01 to the business, which, albeit it's a little bit of an increase, it's not going to tip some of the carts here. I think the bigger increase is going to really burden people and put them out of business. And also bring down the residential. So using that free cash, offsetting it for this year. We know we've got more cash coming in next year, just with assessments going up again, so it's going to keep on going up. But don't crush small businesses in the process. So keep it flat, as Ms. Caswell said, as flat as can be this year, and use some of that free cash that we've gathered over years. That is, I mean, it is tax money, and though we may not have overtaxed, we did a good job of budgeting and we have money left over. This is the time right now, I feel, to give it back and relieve some of the burden that people are feeling with fuel, food, all the costs that are involved, gas, everything is up right now. Use it now, give people a little bit of relief. Down the road, it'll recoup. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Councilor Lane. Councilor Cameron.
Thank you. Many good and compelling arguments on all sides of this. I think the bottom line, though, is, whatever our feelings are in terms of the proportionality on commercial and industrial and residential, the math is inexorable, if that's a word that we can use in the council. And yeah, we need to make a decision. We all made a decision. I think we all voted for the budget last budget season, and as has been said in every budget process, and I think the Ward 1 Chair of Budget and Finance, said it again, as I think he said several times, when we decide on what we're spending on, the next step is to figure out who's going to pay for it. And so while it's easy to, want to fund the schools more, want to fund parks, streets and sidewalks, all of the very valuable city services that we provide to our taxpayers, at some point somebody's going to have to pay for it. Property taxes are really I'd say inherently unfair because they are essentially a flat tax. So this would be like if the federal government had an flat income tax rate of, pick whatever percentage you want, of 5%, and let's pick a billionaire du jour, Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, they're going to pay their 5%. And any one of us in here, who I'm sure are all making a bit less than those two, if we're making 50 grand or 100 grand or 200 grand, we're going to pay 5%. And we don't have such a system at the federal level on income taxes because people who are making such an amount of money, it makes sense that they would pay a higher proportion of their earnings because they can afford it and we need it and they get a lot of benefit out of those taxes. Here, if somebody's a $2 million homeowner or somebody owns a $300,000 home, they're going to be paying the same tax. And there's no way to get around that. And the same with businesses, whether it's a mom and pop that's owned on a street corner in Newburyport, owned by the business owner also owns the property in the big building, and I know there's very few of those versus somebody who owns most of the 40% of the downtown property. They're both going to have the same rate. So what we're talking about here is that differential between the residential and the commercial and industrial. And we can set a rate for each, or they can be the same as we've done since 1986. But somebody's going to have to pay for it, right? So I think we're all in agreement on that. I will point out, and I know there were changes in committee, and I regret to say that I was not there for that, but if my math is correct here, I think our current non-split rate is $12.01 is the mill rate for right now.
That's correct, for last year.
Yeah.
For last year.
Last year.
And it was the same for commercial, it was the same for residential. And what we're talking about now, at this point, if I'm reading the amended out of committee that's in the packet, it would be, instead of 1201 for residential, it would be 1064. And for commercial, industrial, personal property, it would be 11.85. So essentially, if that was to be what carries the day, I mean, the rate is dropping on everybody. It's dropping a little bit for commercial compared to the $12.01, and it's dropping $1.50 roughly for residential. So the rate would be dropping for both. So I just want that made clear. And again, I don't think the mayor and I don't think any councilor ran on splitting the tax rate and getting the business community all up in arms, but this is what we face when we appropriated all the money. And we did that in a balanced way. If we can afford a little bit more in free cash, I'd certainly be open into that to lower the overall amount that has to be covered. Just in terms of this used as a tool in Massachusetts, the at-large counselor cited 241 or so communities that have a uniform rate across classifications, and you do the math on that, there are 108 communities that are split. So residential is paying less, in some cases a lot less, and in some cases a little less. 108 communities out of the 351 are paying, residential is a lesser rate than commercial. There are 8 communities where residential pays a little bit more than commercial, and those are, it's only by small degrees. So the 108 that have a split, yes, they would skew towards places that have more commercial and industrial, and I think it's always been seen as a way to have businesses that are profitable and take up a large part of the community's real estate, to pay a higher percentage. Those are places like Boston, Worcester, Cambridge, obviously some of the bigger cities in Massachusetts, but there's also places like Lexington, Newton, Salem, North Andover that have a split rate. We haven't had a split rate since 1986. It's only been allowed since 1978. So back in the day, every property had the tax rate that was similar. So again, it's all figuring out how we're going to pay for what we want. I find the logic of if we don't do anything, as the mayor had said, if we have it zeroed out, and even if we put in more free cash, residential owners are going to pay a lot more, and commercial owners are going to pay a bit less. I think going with the split rate as proposed from committee means residential is still going to pay a lot more, and commercial is going to pay a bit more, but that it'll balance out and get those a little bit closer in terms of what the actual taxes paid are, and that's really what we're talking about. You can talk all you want about assessments and whether they're accurately made or not on residential and a commercial. Sometimes I'm amazed at how much commercial properties sell for, and in my impression, and it's only an impression, it seems like places sell for a lot more than what they're assessed at. And residential, it seems like it's closer. So, the assessments are actually a key part of the formula here. I think, I applaud the mayor proposing this. I'm sure it wasn't easy. I'm comforted that he said this is not something that the administration would intend to do. I think to the point, for us, every year is going to have to be a discussion. It always will be. It always has been. And I know that is causing a lot of angst in the business community. I understand that. But again, the actual nominal taxes paid under what's proposed would be a very small increase for commercial and still quite a bit of an increase for residential. So I'm in favor of moving forward with it. Again, I'd be open to some conversation about free cash to ameliorate some of that, but that's where I'm standing.
For councilors who have yet to speak, Councilor Wallace.
Thank you, Council President. Just briefly, I'm very torn on this. There's some excellent arguments on both sides. I don't like that this is seemingly pitting residents against businesses. That's not the case. I think it's an intent to I don't know, make some sort of compromise, but it is coming across as residents versus business. And also the precedent that it could set for future years. However, I know we've always used this word, but it is an unprecedented situation that we've been in the last couple of years. So I'm not surprised that this might be new. Ultimately, I represent the Ward 4 residents, and I do hear from them, and I do know that there are some that are struggling to stay in their homes. Some of the elderly are struggling to stay in their homes. And even if it's not a lot of money, it does help them. But I do agree that, if it helps the businesses or some of the people who have spoke tonight to extend this, I think that's only fair. It's been one turnaround. It's been 2 weeks, right? And that's only one turnaround for council. And especially with a change like this, I think more notice should have been given. I realize everybody is pressed for time, but and also I like the idea of the counselor from Ward 6, playing with the numbers a little bit. I would be open to some of that, and again, looking at increasing free cash. So, thank you.
Other councilors, you've got Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. I too have enjoyed the debate, and I enjoyed the debate the other night as well. In terms of, I'll say up front, I'm not a fan of a split tax rate. However, I'm in favor of it this year. And I think that the compromise that was worked out in committee, I too would look for additional free cash. When we talk about percentages, they're scary for people. When we talk about rates themselves, I always want to see a lower rate going forward. But when we talk about real dollars, in terms of that, at the compromise level that we've proposed that's in front of us today, the average homeowner would see a $400 increase in their taxes over next year. That's over the year, $400 for the year. The average business would see $102. So I'm not sure that the apocalypse is coming when we talk about increase of rates and the split tax rate this year coming up. Everyone's costs are going up, supplies are going up, not only for businesses, but also for homeowners as well. Fuel, just to name, electricity, as we know, et cetera, along the way. All of those things are going up. To do nothing in terms of real dollars, homeowners would pay $613 more, and businesses would get almost a $1,200 decrease in their taxes and what they would pay out. For those who fought diligently for the Fair Share Amendment, this is an example of how we bring equity back into our tax rating system going forward. Again, I'm not a fan of a split tax rate. I'm a fan of taxing to 100%. And as I noted and confirmed with the finance director, the average of our free cash has been almost 4% for the last 4 years. So either we're really good at being over conservative, or we're very good at managing expenses, probably a little bit of both. But I don't know that there's one department that hasn't gotten 100% of what they've asked for in terms of an operating budget. So that extra 4% is what I would be willing, and I started the original amendment, to give back more free cash into the kitty here. And to use the Ward 6's recommendation, if we went up just one notch on the percentages, up to $700,000 of free cash, which would be $400,000 plus an additional $305,000 from the administration, we would lower the average tax bill from $406 to $381, and on a business would be $102 to $62. Now, I'm taking these numbers for what they're worth. I haven't done the math myself, but I have to rely on the finance director to do that. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that I don't think any of us are in favor of creating a split tax rate in terms of creating a division within the community itself. But when we talk about equity and we talk about money that has to be spent at the end of the day, I'm putting my thumb on the scale for residents. And I'm going to do what I can to lower their tax rate at the same time that I'm trying to minimize the increase for businesses. And I think that's the balance that we've tried to strike, and I commend the Budget and Finance Committee for actually hosting that debate and having the lively discussion and coming up with this compromise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCauley. Any councilors who have yet to speak?
I'll wait until the amendment comes forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to come back.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Round two.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Just a couple of responses, if I may. I agree with the Ward 1 councilor that this is complex. I believe that it doesn't need to be, that everything is pretty straightforward, the numbers are there, and we can take a look at it. I also agree with the Ward 1 councilor that the long-term outlook is not particularly good, which makes me really, really frightened for next year. Not only in coming back on the shift, which I think is going to be very, very difficult to do. Once we do this shift at this rate, where we're at 10 or 11% of commercial, getting back to a non-split situation, and even if you talk to Ethan about it, it's going to be a trick. And I don't have confidence that we're going to be able to get there. Secondly, it's absolutely true that we are not necessarily commercially oriented in this community. I've been in business here for quite some time, and I know that in recent years with the COVID money coming in and so forth, and the parklets and that, we have been able to move along those lines. But I think that really this has been done without any real long-term vision of our economic situation. There has been nothing that has come forward in terms of what we're going to do economically or where we stand with our goals and objectives that are in our master plan. It's just kind of gone, oh, here, let's do that. There is a rate drop, but it's important to know that the rate drop only relates to the amount of the assessment. So it's easy to use those words that there's a rate drop, but that's not nearly as important as what the assessment is. And in terms of the dollars and cents, it really, I did this exercise about median versus average. You got to look at it that way. You really got to split it up that way, because if you don't do it that way, you just get this average. And the example in here, if you take a look at it, shows you that if you work on just the average of assessment, it's really not fair. And so you have to look at the actual split in the median. And those below the median get less of a benefit than those above the median number. And that's clear-cut across the board. What do we do? We're going to spend, we're talking about spending more free cash, which free cash is a result of more revenue. It may be somewhat of less expenses, but I doubt it. It's really more about more revenue, more growth. There's no other way to talk about it. So what have we done over the past several years with free cash? I'm just dying to tell you this. I was wrong with my numbers before. Since 2018, we have authorized the expenditure of $4,165,000 of free cash. This is free cash. This is money above and beyond what we projected that would come in. We have spent that. It was a banner year in 2018. We spent about $500,000. Guess what? Roads and sidewalk improvements and the Phillips Drive drainage improvements, and also, by the way, 2 dump trucks with plowing equipment. So streets and sidewalks, drainage of Phillips Drive, and more snow plowing equipment took up about $500,000 of that year's $1 million. 2019 was a banner year also, $846,000. It just goes on and on and on. All equipment, all repairs to our infrastructure, All these things that our constituents complain about, we get done because got done because we had $4 million that we were able to dedicate towards that. If we run this down, and we're going to face, we have plenty of projects ahead of us. You all know it. We're in here every single week talking about the culvert, we're talking about the waterfront park, we talk about all these things coming up, fire station, all these expenditures that we have. We're going to go down a rabbit hole, and we're going to end up with a free cash balance that isn't going to be worth diddly, and we're going to start to scramble. It's not fair. It's not fair to not provide to all of our citizens in the same way. And this tax cut is essentially what it is. I hate to say it, it's a political thing. This tax cut is not a fair cut. Those above the median do better. Those below do worse. And because we somehow think that commercial enterprises will go ahead and survive and that there's no trickle down if those commercial enterprises are taxed more, we're fooling ourselves. I'm sorry, I can't support this. I can't support any more free cash, and I can't support the split.
Councilor Zede.
Thank you. So I'm going to make the motion to amend now.
Well, sorry,
happened?
Councilor Preston just raised her hand. Let's her speak. Councilor Preston?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Sorry, excuse me. Sorry to everyone in the room. The reason I'm not there is because COVID has finally found me, so my apologies for all the roll calls to start with. But I had raised my hand in hopes of sort of sneaking in on the first round, just to give my general impressions. So, again, there are many compelling arguments on both sides of this. I'll be brief, but I also am not in favor of split tax rates in general. However, I do feel that this year is an anomaly, and I can support an anomalous tax rate in an anomalous year in terms of assessments. But I want to be very clear that I think I've heard a great deal of concern from the community, mostly the small business community, around the fact that if, once we were to start with a split tax rate, it would be very hard for us to come back from that. And while I do understand that we may still see very high assessments in our next year's assessed values, I think we need to be very sensible about being clear that a split tax rate is not business friendly, and we need to create a business friendly tax environment to be able to create more businesses in the city that help to alleviate the tax burden on the residences. So I want to be clear that while I can be on board with a split tax rate, I do not want to see this as a split tax rate being a perpetual thing within the city. And while I am open to the thoughts on using even more free cash than has been previously suggested, I would like to hear from the finance director, should we consider that. I would like to hear from the finance director in terms of his concerns if that were to happen. All right, thank you.
All right, Director Manning, do you want to address that? And then I see Councilor Wright's hand, Councilor McCauley, and then Councilor Zede. So, Director Manning, I think I've allowed you to speak.
I would be happy to, and if it's okay with the president, I'd like to, hopefully address some of the other questions that have come up in debate, or I could just deal with this exact question at the moment.
No, you're welcome to address all the questions that have come up.
Fantastic, thank you. So first and foremost, I would like to echo Assessor Gilbert in advising against delaying this vote to your next meeting, which I think you moved away from that, which makes me happy. Doing that would put the city in a very tricky position, needing to go through the whole DOR certification process, getting the bills processed, reconciled, printed, and finally mailed, which would be within a matter of 14 business days when you take into account the holiday. And furthermore, I'm not so certain that delaying this decision would necessarily add much value to the process, in that what I think we're currently discussing is a fairly modest shift to address the unusually high difference between the rate of change for assessments for residential properties versus the commercial and industrial properties. I think a decision to make a larger, more permanent CIP shift is clearly a much larger and different debate than the one that is being had this evening. And I think what the administration and the finance department is proposing is a temporary CIP shift as a tool to smooth the change in tax bills that we're seeing this year in particular, which also goes back in the other direction to help mitigate future changes in taxes for the CIP classes as we work to move back to a residential factor of 1 in the coming years when the changes in value are not as significant as we're seeing this year. It might not be 1 year, it might not be 2 years, but I think it would be realistic to, get back there in a very short number of years rather than adopting a more permanent CIP shift, which you see in some of the cities and towns that have that larger CIP base in their community. And lastly, this kind of addresses Councilor Preston's question. I would like to strongly advise against increasing the use of free cash to set the tax rate. As we discussed significantly in committee, while using free cash helps to mitigate the current year increase for taxpayers, one of the unfortunate consequences is that it passes the burden onto future years as we work to balance a budget that relies on the full tax levy. For example, if you're able to shave off 1.25% from the current year tax rate, which is what the amended proposal does, you do end up adding that extra 1.25% onto next year's tax bill, which only is digging a deeper hole that needs to be made up through free cash or other funds. I think while building a budget below the full Prop 2.5% levy limit, sounds good. It is very challenging to do, given the city's already known fixed costs for personnel and benefits. If you look at health insurance, forecasted to go up 4% each year, and pension assessments that automatically increase by 5% each year. And I think, as Councilor Z mentioned, making this discussion, more of an integral part of the annual budgeting process, definitely makes sense, as the two really rely heavily on one another. I would greatly urge your support of the amended proposal in your packet this evening.
Thank you, Director Manning. So Councilor Wright, you had not spoken yet, and then Councilor McCauley.
Thank you, President. I don't think that a split tax rate is what's best for Newburyport. Number one, commercial takes such a small fraction of our tax base. So as you just heard from the finance director, this year's actions will take 2 or 3 years to undo. Next year's actions are going to be very likely to be exactly the same as this year. If not the same, very close to being the same. I have a member of my household who's also in the real estate business, and you just have to look at the sales. They're very comparable in 2021 and 2022. So if we go down this road, not only can we not undo it in 2 or 3 years, we may be faced with the same decision next year, which will further impact this and further push out the discrepancy between what the businesses will be taxed and what the residential will be taxed. So on the split rate, I wouldn't be in favor of doing it this year. It's ironic because I'm essentially voting for a tax increase for myself, but I think that's what's best for the city at this point, is not to split the tax rate.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Thank you, Council President. We focus on the revenue side, and it's very easy for us to, I'll say it in theory, it's very easy for us to resolve this and get us back to 1 next year, is we need to pass a budget that's just below the tax levy. We need to say no to some projects that are coming up. We need to ask for more efficiency out of city government. We need to evaluate during budget time what a need to have versus want to have. And that's what we're trying to talk about here. We made this decision in June. And so now it's time to pay for it. And so the answer is, if we go to 1, do I ask every resident, homeowner to pay $613 more on an annual basis? And oh, by the way, I ask every business to pay $1,200 less? That's what we decided in June. So budget isn't when we show up and then just say yes because the administration wants to do it. We're fiduciary in this municipal corporation that we're part of. And what we have to do here is to say maybe $66 million of a tax levy needs to be $64 million, right? That's on us. And we can't solve this by spending our way out of it. We also have to make the hard decisions about cutting back on some of these things that are in the levy budget. Thank you.
Councilor Wallace.
Briefly, I just want to say I completely agree with the councilor from Ward 5. I think every project, every budget, we need to ask questions and not go so much with the emotions and because that is our job as the councilors. Is there a way to value engineer something? You know, even just shaving off a little bit as we go along, it's okay for us to question the experts. Because otherwise we just have less money to spend or we end up in a situation like this. So I think he's spot on. Thank you.
Councilor Zaid.
Thank you. I just, so just like I did in committee, I think, again, now taking all these things into consideration, we have to come to a box on this thing. That's basically where this all goes. And I'm now hearing, kind of trying to read the room. I mean, I see both people wanting to maybe vote just on the shift or, take it together as we did in committee. I'm happy to do either. I'm just going to telegraph that, very bluntly, I think that the council is at the 0 row, in my opinion, just counting here on my fingers. And for me, what I would suggest is a compromise to the compromise, if it gets us to where we want to go, and I realize that not everybody would like this. I mean, to me, this is actually the compromise here. This 5.1 gets you very close to the 4.8 we were at, and it does require. Now, let me give you the last piece of this, which is that we have a $655,000 request for free cash for the culvert. And in committee, we talked a lot about using ARPA money for this instead. And by happenstance or by holiday magic, 655 plus the 553 puts you right in the ballpark for that field. So to my colleagues, and what I'm asking you is, do you want to take a joint amendment on it? Or do you want me to just motion to settle the shift and put that to bed once and for all? Because I think anybody who's been around the block here for a couple hours realizes that they can count. So I mean, it's really either way. But that's where my head is going. That's where I came into this meeting thinking that would be the balance point. And I will address the free cash for next year to the finance director's point. So I don't see anybody's head moving. So let's just start with the tax shift. Make a motion again to amend Order 392 to 391 to 1.000.
Second.
I think we should vote on that.
All right.
Put it to bed.
Does everyone know what we're?
So it's motion to amend to 1, which basically changing what is in your packet, which is at.
Which means there's no shift.
0.9880 moves to 1. First and seconded. Roll call.
Roll call.
Everyone know? Ready? Council McCauley.
No.
Council Preston.
I I'm sorry, I found that very hard to follow. Can I
Okay.
hear again what this is?
I can recite, I think. It's a motion to amend, changing only one of the orders to a residential factor of 1, meaning there's no split. There's a first and second on it. And I started a roll call. Councilor McCauley has spoken, and now you're up.
Thank you. I'm a no.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
No.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
No.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Motion passes. The amendment passes. We are now at 1.
Counselor Zede.
So this is kind of an odd motion to make because really we need the administration's assent. But I'm going to make the motion for discussion anyways, and that's to amend transfer number 144 to increase what was amended in committee to 553,602 to a total of 1163902.
Say it again.
Transfer 144 came out of committee as a transfer of 553,602. I'm motioning that we make that 1163902.
Second.
And if I may speak to it now. So this is exactly the box I was just telling you. That's where the 1163902 comes from. So let me just explain my rationale. First of all, the finance director's point is well taken. You know, this is like rearranging the chairs on the Titanic to some degree. When you agree you're going to spend the money, then you have to come and get the money at the end. And when you rob one year to pay for another year, you're creating a perpetual cycle. That's the downside of doing this, and I fully acknowledge that. However, a lot has been said tonight about how this is an extraordinary year. It's not just extraordinary because of the rates of change difference between residential, and the other thing that's extraordinary is this ARPA money that fell out of the sky. And that is a one-time extraordinary thing, but it's a lot easier to put your finger on and say, with relative confidence, that will not be happening again. So we probably feel pretty good that the rates of change will likely be similar in 22 as they were in 21. Therefore, next year, that's the debate we just had about the factor. And by a vote, we've now said, okay, we don't want to do a split tax rate. So this is the other half of that compromise, in my opinion. It's a different version of the same compromise. I'm trying to effectively take the residential close to where we came out of committee, 4.8 to 5.1. When you look, yes, it's going to change over on the right side too. The commercial is going to go down, but we already had that debate now. So now it's just a question of doing so. And what I'm suggesting really is that this actually takes a couple steps to do. One is that we utilize the free cash amount here. Of course, again, we need the assent of the administration to do this because I can't initiate an expenditure. None of us can. And then secondly, I would propose that when we get to the culvert, we hang tight on that and we need the ARPA committee. I'm going to just go out on a limb and say that you have the ARPA committee here, at least many of us, the 3 counselors that sit on it anyways. And I just think this is a no-win. To be honest, overall, this whole issue is a no-win because you know, it's time, the bills come. The meal was great, now it's time to pay. And so it's always an unhappy thing when that has to happen. But I think this is doable, and I think it's justifiable given the one-time bump we have from ARPA. And frankly, I think the culvert is a ARPA like slam dunk. It's not like I'm stretching to fit that in, despite the safe harbor and the fact that we can spend it any way we want. We sort of have had this thought that we would spend it towards infrastructure. Makes a lot of sense to me. So that's my amendment. Did I get a second? I think I got a second.
So further discussion, Councilor Vogel, you had your hand up.
Thank you. If it's possible, could we put some real numbers to that? Ethan, I know you're still on holiday. I was wondering if it's possible to put some real numbers to what it is to use $1,163,000 and change out of our free cash, and what that actually does for, in terms of the real estate tax dollar amount. Are you still there, Ethan, or enjoying the holiday?
Ethan, did you hear the question?
I'm still here. So essentially what it's doing is it's defraying 1% from what was discussed in committee. So, for example, next year, if we balance the tax rate, and it's a 4% increase, let's say, for the average single-family home, that automatically will become 6.25%, because you're having to add on what we didn't raise this year onto next year's tax rate. So I just want to make sure that everyone's kind of aware that that will be the consequence. And sure, we'll have some free cash to mitigate that, but to say that we'll have another 1.1 million in free cash, taking into account that free cash is also used, for a lot of things, to build the financial reserves of the city, but, largely for one-time capital spending as well. I think the numbers kind of speak for themselves. If you look at the kind of third page of the charts there, what would currently be $513 increase for the average single-family home will become a $430 increase. What would be a $1,357 savings for deep reduction in the tax bill for commercial property becomes a tax decrease of almost $1,500. So that's kind of how I would put numbers around what's on the table.
Councilor Lane.
If I could just ask the finance director one other question. If we were to sell a property, say like the Brown School, for like $3.5 million and replace that, where would that put us for next year, having an influx of cash from a sale or from another source of revenue that we could perhaps get into the city?
Sure. So that falls under the sale of property, of real estate property statute, which would require the funds to be invested to repay the debt service on the building, which there would be none, or spent on basically a capital item with a useful life greater than 5 years. So, certainly that would free up some revenue to undertake capital projects on the horizon.
Councilor Vogel, then Councilor McCauley.
Thank you, Council President. Ethan, if I may, again, you have such a way with numbers. So you threw out $513, and then you said $430. You're talking about on the average assessed value? What is it? Where are you going with this?
It's on the top of page 21.
I don't have it with me.
The average tax bill difference.
The average tax bill. So the average tax bill is going to not increase from 513, it's going to increase 430. So,
$83.
yeah, $83. We're talking about spending $1,163,000 of our free cash to save our average taxpayer, despite the whole conversation about looking at the median and all that, and those on the higher end saving more than $83, that we're going to spend $1.163 million of our free cash to more or less save our taxpayers, our residential taxpayers, $83 in their taxes next year. I just want to put that out there. I can say it 16 more times.
Councilor McCauley, then Councilor Wright.
No, I was just scratching my face.
Well, you had your hand up earlier. Councilor Wright.
So So that's not exactly correct, Councillor. If we took the free cash we were going to spend on the culvert and spent it on ARPA money, that would be 600,000. So half of that would go back into free cash and be spent by ARPA. So that's the reality of what we're discussing.
Councillor McCauley?
Thank you. So I would rather put $83 in every homeowner's pocket as a way of sharing the good fortune we've had. When we talk about free cash, as the at-large councilor had mentioned, since 2018 to 22, we spent $4.3 million or so in free cash. Last year, our free cash was $4.3 million. So it's because we got ARPA money. It's because we got other things. It's because we taxed people to 100% of the levy. And it's because our departments were efficient. It's because of all those things. And so I would rather put $83, as I said, back in every homeowner's pocket. But let's remember, we're putting $1,300, $1,400 in every business owner's pocket as well by spending that. So, I hope what goes away is the criticism that we're not trying to help both our residents and our businesses. It's unfortunate, but that's where we are. Thank you.
Councillor Zaid?
Just a couple things. One is, just a lot of numbers being thrown around tonight, but we need to keep looking at the deltas, the differences, not the absolutes. So I mean, where we are in with the black dash box, we were at 530, where we were in the red dash box, now going up to the first row, because you can ignore all the other ones, that's settled. We're spending the difference, right? 553 to 1.1, so we're spending $600,000 to do the 83, not the 1.1. That would take you all the way back to the beginning, which is 630. So you're defraying more like $200, just to use a round number. But with that being said, I think now is a sensible time to pause for a second and see if this has legs with the administration, because if it doesn't matter what we think, we cannot expend this money. Right now, we have an agreed upon 553, so we're right at that 513 line. We're actually one to the right, because we did amend that in committee. So we're right there right now, and so we're debating moving to the right on here, but we can't really do that. So as I had said, I don't know how we can do that. I don't know if Andrew, if you're in a position to talk about that, or Ethan is. I know the mayor's not here tonight due to illness. How can we address this, or Ethan could speak to? I don't know who can or who should, but we need to know to keep going.
I'll just kick it off real quick, and then if Ethan wants to speak more. I think we came here tonight with what we viewed as a balanced proposal, which would allow us to meet all the goals that we were trying to come to. I think that the council's made a decision which makes a lot of sense for them so far. But I think what you've heard from the finance director so far is a holistic view of where we're at in our budget and thinking about not this year, but future years. By using this much free cash, we not only set ourselves back in the amount that we'll be able to spend on important capital projects that all of you are going to come and support here in a few months, and it sets us back for, in the future, being able to bring up that levy that we'd like to. So I don't think the administration is particularly enthusiastic about it. It's hard to speak for the mayor, but I'll let Ethan speak as well to what he's viewing here, and then we can look towards coming up with a solution.
Ethan?
Sure, I would echo what Andrew said. I clearly wouldn't be in a position to, suggest to the mayor that he amend his recommendation to use that level of free cash. I just worry about the position that it puts us in this time next year when we're having the same conversation. Just having to make up even a bigger difference, and just potentially not having the funds to make up that gap. It's just kind of a realistic proposition that's out there. So I would not support that recommendation as the finance director.
Councilor McCauley, then Councilor Zaid.
Yeah, I know we took a vote on this, but compromise is throwing itself on the floor, right? So I would, for contemplation, I would suggest that we go back closer to the recommendation of the finance director of the 1.25%, but go to a split tax rate of 0.05. I know we took a vote on the other one. What that means in real terms, on average dollars again, is an increase for $455 for the residents and a decrease of $628 for the businesses that we're talking about. I know it's not perfect. It's not what the administration wanted. It's not what we voted on just a few minutes ago. But if the administration's has a financial outlook that differs from ours, I think we should maybe contemplate that if we want to try to move forward. Thank you.
Point of order, what was the vote on the amendment, please? Just the number.
Vote on the amendment was 7-4 in favor.
Councilor Zaid.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, right? The compromise comes in one of two ways, right? It's this or it's this. So, I mean, I personally still think that the will of the council is to stay in the first row. That's just my read. I can always be wrong. But, I mean, you know, if 1163 doesn't work, you know, you can basically split the difference and go down to the 858, the 1.75. And at some point, we are circling the drain, so to say, on the amounts. But at the end of the day, you know, I don't know if a recess helps, but I mean, this is like budget night, unfortunately. That's how it is this year. We need to get, at this point, it's fruitless for us to keep going up and down the chain. We need to understand. So unfortunately, I have to put, somebody on the spot here, if it's Ethan or if it's Andrew, or if, I think the overwhelming thing was don't put this off for 2 weeks, but we need to know what's the balance point on this. If the answer is the administration will not support anything higher than 553, then we know we can only go up or down the line this way. If there's a willingness to move in the opposite direction, then so be it. So,
Andrew, do you want, I don't have a problem giving us a 5-minute recess right now.
Fine.
Okay. Everyone, 5-minute recess? Do we need to do a roll call for that? Okay, 5-minute recess.
we do a motion to order pizza?
Want me to chase him?
Stuff.
It's all right.
That was
Take
the
your
one
time.
thing
We got all night.
forgot. And I was so upset.
For you. Just waiting for you.
Here he is. All right.
Oh, geez.
All right, folks, we're back in session. All right, back on Zoom. Mr. Levine.
It's all you.
Hi, everybody. Hope you enjoyed your recess. So thanks a lot for giving us that opportunity. And really, this has been, I think, a debate that's been extremely helpful. I think you all realize just how much we're trying to weigh competing interests here and make the best decision for the future of the city, for right now and for the future. So thank you for really putting a lot of thought into this. So the administration had a conversation. As you all know, we came into this evening comfortable with a $401,000 expense out of free cash. And so much of our thoughts right now are going into how do we make sure that folks who are the most vulnerable or residents are being taken care of, especially folks on fixed income. The city is committed to making sure that we're using programs like our tax abatement programs for seniors. We're committed to making sure that we're encouraging the legislature to pursue this means-tested senior exemptions that they're considering. We'd like to see that being used in the future. At the same time, we're seeing other communities besides just ours that are using shifts and other tools because of the unprecedented nature of right now. The town of Norton just did a shift this year of 1.05 when they had historically always been a single tax rate community. So we're seeing this all over, that there is anomalies, and we're trying to do them the best we can. So the administration is, as we said, we wanted to come in with $401,000 use of free cash. We're willing to go up to $706,000 use of free cash, $706,177. If that helps you find the right box on the chart, we hope you can find it. We still think that the shift of 1.1 is appropriate. We know we've already moved past that, but just wanted to make that clear. So hope we can find the right box on the chart.
I'll amend my motion to the 706 on transfer 144. Who was the second? Was that Councilor Wright?
Is that okay with you?
Okay. Discussion. Councilor Zaid.
I'm just going to say that I think this is a hard-fought discussion, and I think I motion to move to this because I think it gives us closure, and we can get this done tonight. And just to head off the question of what's the nominal amount, so we're starting to play in down into like the $40 differential between some of these things. So I think this is fair and is doable. So I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Further discussion. Councilor Lang.
Just to clarify, so that brings us to 439 and
489.
489.
I'm sorry, okay,
489.
489, and what does it do to business?
Minus 1398.
Okay.
Further discussion? Roll call.
So motion to increase transfer 144 to $706,000, correct?
The exact number is 706,177.
Thank you, 706,177. Council McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
No?
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede? Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
By a vote of 10 to 1, motion passes.
Last thing, Madam President.
Yes.
Motion to amend 392 to both numbers to be $10.74. And I'd love to get a yes from the finance director that I just got that correct. So in summation, the tax factor will be 1.00, the transfer is 706,177, and the tax rate is 10.74 for all classes of property in the city.
Second.
Director Manning, do you want to confirm that one for us?
I concur.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? All right.
So motion to approve 392 with a 10.74 residential factor and a 10.74 commercial, so-called CIP factor.
This is just a motion to amend that last one, and then I was thinking we could vote on all of them amended together, because that's how the motion started.
Second.
We've already voted on 2 out of the 3.
On amendments, right?
So, yeah, we can, as amended and final approval on the other 2?
Yes.
Okay.
So
So we still have a collective motion on the floor. So if, maybe cleaner way would be just to amend
392.
392?
Yes,
With this vote?
1074.
So we're amending it to 10.74 both factors,
Both the rates.
both rates. Second, everybody clear?
No, I'm not clear.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure my vote stands where I want it to stand. So what's the collective vote?
So there is a collective motion to approve all 3, the transfer in both orders.
As
that is
amended.
Behind this. This is an amendment before we get to that final vote. And this is amending the tax rates on Order 392 to go from 10.64 to 10.74.
Okay.
And 11.85 to 10.74.
Okay. Yep, I understand.
Okay,
Here we go.
roll call.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
No?
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede? Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
10-1, motion passes. That leaves on the floor the motion to approve collectively, as amended, the 2 orders and the transfer.
Here we go.
Am I right?
Correct.
Roll call.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
No?
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
10-1, all 3 approved, as amended. Thank you.
I got it.
All right. So next on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Which consists this evening of the approval of the minutes for November 14. There are 3 communications. Communication 449 is a letter from Jim McCarthy regarding the Conservancy to go to B&F. Communication 450, a memo regarding the Retirement Board expense budget to go to Receive and File. Application 115, winter shanties behind the Custom House, 12/4 through 3/5/23 to go to Public Safety. Application 116 is a state automotive repair secondhand motor vehicle license to go to License and Permits. There are no transfers. There are 2 appointments. Jamie Gagnon, 17 Daniel Lucy Way to the CPC. That would go to Planning and Development. Appointment 358, Paul Gardacci, 135 Beach Road, Salisbury, Constable for City Business. Bear with me. We have the following items coming out of Budget and Finance. Appointment 356, Order 390, 391, 392 have already come out, been disposed of. Transfer 139 is coming out, 142, 143, transfer 144 has already been disposed of. Public Safety, Order 393, and Ordinance 131 are coming out. Rules, Ordinance 128 is coming out. And that is the consent agenda this evening.
Motion to, oh,
Sorry.
Councilor McCauley?
Item, appointment 358, it's unassigned. Should that go to either Public Safety or General Government?
Clerk Johns, which one would you?
I would think, because it's a constable for city business, maybe general government.
Okay.
just,
Before you move, yeah, could we remove the retirement board expense budget from the consent agenda?
Certainly.
Okay.
I just want to state for the record that we don't have to refer appointment 358 anywhere. We can approve it on a first reading, and then it will get a second reading. So I don't know if there's a reason to, I'm happy to, but I don't think Gen Gov has a meeting booked.
We don't.
Is there some particular?
So unless Council McCauley has an objection.
I don't have an objection. It's just everybody else has gone for a public meeting.
All right.
So it does not matter to me if we read them tonight.
Do you have a reason to send it to committee is the question?
I send everything to committee.
Oh, okay.
It's up to you, President.
Well, right now, we just removed it, right?
No.
No.
Right now, it's still, the one that's out is the retirement board.
Oh, so it's amended?
Yes.
Gen Gov.
General government. General government. General government is. That's a decision.
I'd like to make a motion also to amend and put 359 in and send that to Neighborhood and City Services appointment to save us another roll call.
Done.
So motion to approve as amended, or with those amendments.
Second.
You just did what? What did you do?
I put in appointment 359 to go to this Neighborhood and City Services,
Okay.
just so we don't have to do it later.
Oh, okay.
I had Councilor Lane seconded, and I had it as amended.
Okay.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Roll call on the amended consent agenda. Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright, excuse me.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So there was no mayor's update.
Actually, there was.
Motion to receive and file?
Yep.
Second.
Roll call.
On receiving filing mails update, Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
And Councilor Khan.
Yes.
And Councilor Lane.
Yes.
And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
First reading appointments.
So we have already disposed of appointment 359, that we have none.
All right. Communications.
Communication 451 is the PTO hot cocoa table at tree lighting.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
This came in as a emergency over Thanksgiving, and after review of the application, it was for a table to sell cocoa at tree lighting. It happened. It was a success. The health director signed off on it, and so it's after the fact.
All right. Roll call.
Receiving filing, communication 451, Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Oh, yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
And Shan. Thank you. Communication 448.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
Councilor Vogel?
Thank you, Council President. So So I'll accept that motion to send it, to simply receive and file. My intent was to make sure that it was in the public view and in the public record. If that's the will of the council, if anybody has any desire to discuss it any further in public meeting, I'm certainly agreeable to having that done, but I'll leave it at the will of the council as to whether to receive or file or discuss it further.
Further discussion? All right, roll call and receive and file.
Council McCauley?
No.
Council Preston?
Yes.
Council Vogel?
No?
Council Wallace?
No.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
No.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
No.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
No.
Councilor Shan?
No.
Motion
Refer
fails.
to budget and finance. So we've got all the other stuff.
I'll second, yeah.
Okay.
Who seconded that?
Councilor Khan.
Budget and Finance, let me just catch up for a second. So, moving into Budget and Finance, Communication 448, Councilor McCauley,
Yes.
Councilor Preston, Councilor Preston,
Sorry. Sorry, just my computer's stalling. Yes.
okay, thank you. Councilor Vogel,
Yes.
Councilor Wallace,
Yes.
Councilor Wright,
Yes.
Councilor Zede,
Yes.
Councilor Cameron,
Yes.
Councilor Donahue,
Yes.
Councilor Khan,
Yes.
Councilor Lane,
No.
and Councilor Shan.
Yes.
10-1, motion passes.
Moving right along. Transfers.
Right along to the late file communication 452, Boy Scouts Invitation Night.
Motion to waive the rules and approve. We've already opened an emergency preamble, so the motion to bring it out of committee and to waive the rules and to approve it.
Second.
Second.
Boy Scouts, again, have a late file. They'd like to be at invitation night, 2, 9, and 18, whatever the number is. They'd like a table at Market Square and then along N Street. Everything seemed to be in order. They're selling Monopoly kits going forward. We'll work with them to fill out appropriate application, but we should approve it for tonight. Thank you.
Further discussion? All right, roll call.
Roll call on Boy Scouts 452, Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston,
Yes.
Councilor Vogel,
Yes.
Councilor Wallace,
Yes.
Councilor Wright,
Yes.
Councilor Zede,
Yes.
Councilor Cameron,
Yes.
Councilor Donahue,
Yes.
Councilor Khan,
Yes.
Councilor Lane,
Yes.
and Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that leaves us to Communication 451, which is Councilor Vogel's tax discussion.
Motion to receive and file?
Second.
I'm
Get a
okay.
new phone?
A little levity.
My phone may not be.
All right, roll call to receive and file 452. Sorry, Councilor Vogel's communication.
Councilor McCauley,
Yes.
Councilor Preston,
Yes.
Councilor Vogel,
Yes.
Councilor Wallace,
Yes.
Councilor Wright,
Yes.
Councilor Zede,
Yes.
Councilor Cameron,
Yes.
Councilor Donahue,
Yes.
Councilor Khan,
Yes.
Councilor Lane,
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Second reading appointments.
I think it's communication 450 now,
How
the
many?
one that was removed.
Let me just see for a second.
That was
Oh, we did
the,
repove, yeah, you're right, we removed that one.
That was the memo that was pulled out, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. it might be just a administrative error, but there's a memo, and the memo references a budget, and there was no budget supplied. So if we could request the budget to go along with the memo?
So noted, yeah.
Thank you.
We did that intentionally.
Oh, yeah?
Because over the years, we haven't included it, but I think it's a better practice to include it. So we will change our practice going forward.
Thank you. Motion to receive and file?
Second?
Yes.
Roll call to receive and file.
Who moved it? Was that Councilor Cameron that moved that?
Yes.
Thank you, that's what I thought. Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes?
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
No.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm not even going to guess anymore. Clerk Jones, what's next?
396?
Second reading appointments.
No, I think we have...
I don't think we have any more communications.
Still in communications? Oh, my God.
To the second reading of appointments.
Okay.
See that email from the resident on Cherry?
What was that?
I'm sorry?
The letter that was on the
We're not to orders yet.
With the orders yet.
This doesn't have a number on it,
We're
though.
not there.
Was that a late, formal late?
Really, but we were going to, you're right, Councilor Donahue, we were going to include that, make it part of the record, whether we're going to read it in or make it a late file. Probably cleaner, Councilor Zede, if you can just move to make it a late file.
So moved. It goes with 396, right?
It does, it's
Yeah.
supporting documentation, which is sort of...
Okay.
So yeah, motion to make it a late file and refer it and Order 396 collectively to public safety,
That would be
Second.
perfect.
and also 394 to planning and development,
While we're at it,
and also collectively to approve on second reading Monica Welch, Cultural Council 12125, and Adrian Silver Smith, Cultural Council 113025.
you're pushing it.
No,
Love it.
that's why we have a tape.
Councilor McCameron?
I'm going to recuse myself from 394. I live a house and a half away, so it'll go to planning and development, and somebody else can run that part of the meeting.
So should we only do the appointments together and then do the orders together?
You could vote for the whole thing.
Yes.
And I just won't vote on any of it. I don't think
Okay.
it'll be controversial. I think everything will make it through.
Okay.
I'm with you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to approve, and Councilor Cameron is recused. Councilor McCauley?
No.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes?
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Recuse?
Of course. Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
10-1, collective motion passes. Okay, orders, unless I'm mistaken. We have Order 394, which is the Hancock Street Tree Maintenance Access
We just
Easement.
did that.
Just did that.
We just did
them
that.
all. We did them all.
We did them all.
Councilor Zede was efficient. I think
Good
we're-
thing you have somebody watching this thing.
Long night.
On to committee items, I think.
Right, committee items.
You can always watch it.
I do.
All right.
Okay.
So, Councilor Vogel, Ad hoc Committee on Adaptive Use of Brown School Property.
Yes, I can report on that. Thank you. We do have a meeting coming up. I think it got moved to the 15th of next month. There is a little bit of communication has gone back and forth with the mayor and I. There is there is a plan that has come in and numbers around that plan. And I have asked him to share that, both the planning director and myself have asked him to share that plan and those numbers. And it was my intent to really not make it a big public deal. I just was hoping that we could get those numbers so that everybody on the committee could take a look at them and start, you know, on the same footing as we move forward to discuss what to do with the building. So I've asked twice and have been refused both times. I'm going to ask one more time, and I'll also put it out to the committee to ask how they feel about having that documentation so that we can all take a look at it. I feel as though it's sort of, I don't know, it takes the wind out of the sails of the committee if the administration has their mind set on what they want to do with that building, is what it appears like, and they're manipulating this proposal that has come in to value engineer it or whatever it is that they're trying to do. I'm not sure what the committee is for, quite frankly. And I don't know why we're wasting everybody's time if they are going to go ahead and hang on to all that information and not allow us to have it. So I'll ask again, and hopefully at our next meeting, I'll be able to say, hey, guess what? That's my report.
Is it all right if I weigh in?
Yes, please.
I apologize for any issues or miscommunication here. The council did receive an email back from the mayor saying that we were finalizing, looking at updated numbers that came in from EGA, the consultant, because they had done a value engineering. So we had looked at the numbers, and we have a memo that's been written. It was going to go out today, but the mayor's illness, he needed another look at it. So looking forward to getting that out this week. Tomorrow, Wednesday, it should be pretty soon. We've put a lot of work into that, and we'll be sharing a memo as well as the raw numbers from EGA. So again, apologize if anyone on the committee feels like their work's been held up. It was not our intention, but we do have that information, or are looking forward to sharing that to continue the good work of this committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Councilor Lane?
I just want to, I wholeheartedly agree with Councilor at large. I don't know why any numbers are being engineered at this point when we're still going through the process. And this goes back to my initial concern was the ship's already left the station. So if that's the case, I don't want to be part of this ad hoc anymore if we already know what we're going to do. I'm not going to waste my time. I don't want to waste anyone else's time. And I think that, you know, just to get on record here and say that all aspects should be looked at it, I think I tipped my hat a little bit earlier in this meeting when I said that the sale should be considered as well. So I just want to put that on record and let the administration know that.
Councilor McCauley. Thank you, Councilor Lane.
I just want to maybe remind us all that the Brown School was part of the funds that we had put towards quantifying the implications down at Low Street. So part of the money was to do an 8% design on Low Street and an 8% design on the Brown School to give us illustrative numbers as to what it might take to do some things going forward. So I, as being one of the people who added that amendment in, I don't think there was any intent to have a secondary agenda, but rather to give the committee, as it moved forward, illustrative examples of what expenses could be incurred at different times. And that was while the ad hoc was forming, and now that it's formed, I too would welcome any type of numbers or memo or something like that. But I would ask that the administration review the scope to make sure that it's appropriate and not necessarily overhyped in terms of in terms of a proposal, let's say, from EGA, but rather just illustrative numbers, which is what we've asked for. Thank you.
Councilor McCauley. All right, so I would say that's it for the Brown School. As far as Market Landing Park, we are meeting tomorrow night at 6:30 to discuss the order that Councilor McCauley put in for the naming rights. And the other agenda item is the go-forward plan for the committee as a whole. So, moving on from there, Councilor Zeid, Budget and Finance.
Okay, motion to approve appointment number 356, Victoria Finnegan to Assistant Treasurer Collector, 12/1/25.
Second.
committee met on the 17th, and Victoria was not able to join us due to a prior scheduling conflict, but Julie Langeran, the city's treasurer, did appear and spoke very favorably and highly of Ms. Finnegan, and this is a reappointment. She has been serving in the position 4 years so far in the department, and just felt has been a great addition to the team and has worked well. This position is a Teamsters admin position, and it does not have any individual contract of its own. The committee recommends you approve this by a vote of 3-0.
Thank you. Further discussion? Roll call.
Appointment 356. Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
And Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next is a motion to approve Order 390, pay prior year bills.
Second?
Second.
Same committee meeting, so this is a relatively small request. These are funds that were essentially encumbered prior to the end of the fiscal year, but the bills didn't come in until afterwards. And under state law, we are authorized to pay those bills, but it does require city council approval. We did have some brief discussion about the elevator, and the response from Ethan Manning was that the city does carry a contract with a vendor, and they basically do all the maintenance and inspections on the elevators throughout the city, and that was the reason for that amount there. 3-0 is the recommendation in committee.
Further discussion? Roll call.
Approving Order 390, Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
And Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next is a motion to approve transfer 139. This, thank you. This is the culvert, general fund free cash, 655, 525 to the waterfront culvert. I know this came up in conversation earlier, but it is on the list to come out of committee, so I'm bringing it to you. The committee did meet about this twice, this 17th and also our prior committee meeting. The primary staff that were attending to discuss this with us were the city engineer, John Eric White, and the planning director, Andy Port. So first thing is explain a little bit about the project. So we're specifically talking about an area of culvert at the bottom of Market Square that is designed, that it does exist. There is a culvert there today, but the culvert has been sort of deemed as undersized and underperforming relative to the need. And the need is that this culvert specifically carries water, not just from the Market Square area, but up to High Street. Those drains go down here, and then this drain runs underneath the ground and eventually discharges into the river. So this is not that entire stretch by any means. This is a small stretch in between two buildings. Councilors who've been on will recall that maybe 4 or 5 years ago, funds were appropriated to build a sort of highway sidewalk thing that was to carry the water, but this is underground. We did have, again, quite a lengthy conversation surrounding a number of things, so I'll do my best to summarize them. The first one was the technical end of things. So on the technical side, we spent time discussing the size of the culvert and how the size was determined. John Eric White went over that. He did express that he feels that this is the appropriate size culvert for this project. It will be a bottleneck in that it's a smaller culvert or smaller pipe on the other side heading downstream and potentially smaller upstream, but that this could serve as somewhat of a reservoir and hold excess for some period of time while the water can percolate down into the river and get out. We also talked about the technical aspect of the project itself, and that brings up the timing aspect. So this is a priority, was the answer from the city engineer. It does appear in our CIP, but I think in some ways the discussion centered around the timing being expedited slightly by the waterfront park and the desire not to put a park on top of this and then have to remove or destroy anything to go in and put the culvert in. Then we talked about, so on the technical and now bleeding a little bit into finance, this project, big question was, why does a culvert this short cost this much? And the city engineer went through that at length, that there's actually a tremendous amount of money here relative to site work, so potential contamination of the site, abandoning in place the existing culvert, and potentially being able to use the backfill from what they're going to dig up to put the new one in to go into the old one. And then also the plan to have the contractor have to work at low tide in order to be able to avoid dewatering costs or to minimize dewatering costs. And he stated that they did learn a lot from the Black Cow culvert, which some may remember from some years ago. It's somewhat of a similar thing. So continuing on with the finance concept, the other main area of discussion beyond just why is the cost high and then explaining why that there's more than just the pipe itself and the culvert was, should we utilize ARPA for this? We did kind of go back and forth about that. That was the discussion around that. And then finally was just a discussion about risk of the budget being exceeded because of contamination. And the city engineer stated that VHB, which is the firm that is doing that is the LSP, the licensed site professional, feels confident in the data they have, which is a combination of documentation and et cetera, that they feel they understand what the risk characterization is there and they don't expect it to go up, and that the contaminants they're dealing with here are not the same contaminants that were, say, being dealt with on the rail trail behind the wastewater treatment plant. So we did amend it in committee, and that was just to amend the transfer so that any unutilized funds would return back to free cash. So there did seem to be some degree of confidence that hopefully it wouldn't come into the full 655. So we just asked that at the end of the project, at closure, if it costs 600 or something, that the 55 would come rather than being orphaned in this new account that will be created. That amendment passed 3-0, and then the recommendation to approve was 2-1 in committee.
Further discussion. Councilor Wallace.
Thank you, Council President. I do agree that this is a very important infrastructure that needs to be upgraded, but I'm actually not going to support it tonight. I feel like this is one of those items where maybe we can save some money somehow, or look at phasing, look at alternate methods. And this is also one of those situations where it went to budget and finance, but maybe it should have gone to neighborhood and city services, and we could have gotten into more the technical piece. And also it goes into, where is the oversight of, public works projects, and that will tie into our next discussion. I just feel like it needs a little more vetting. Again, I think it's important, but we don't know any schedule, any cost for the piece that goes up State Street. I mean, so, because the upgrade of this culvert now, as the city engineer stated, is not going to solve the flooding now. It's a good time to put it in, and I agree with that. Personally, I would like to make sure, now we've gotten rid of some free cash. I would like to revisit ARPA, the ARPA committee, and look at alternate sources of funds. I also would like to make sure we have our roadway plan come in for next year and understand what costs those might be, and are some of that coming from ARPA? Anyways, I just would like to see the big financial picture and a few extra kind of technical cost-saving measures. Not that I disagree with it, I just think it could use a little more vetting. Thank you.
So I'm going to let Director Port speak, because I know this was the reason he was here tonight. Director Port, do you want to speak to the timing here?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
It was a little bit hard to hear what the last question was.
So the discussion that Councilor Wallace was making was to hold off on approving this and do some more diligence on cost and timing. I think you had some questions on the timing here, since it goes along with getting some of the waterfront documents out.
So with Market Landing Park, we have a big deal we're doing in the coming months. We're looking at the bid package right now, integrating that with plans and specs from Sasaki. If we postpone that decision, we will really not be able to integrate the culvert work in the bidding, and potentially, if we decide to do it at a later point, end up paying more by doing it by change order. The comment that was made about State Street further up, I realized that it may not address everything uphill, and I can't speak for General White, the city engineer. But I think that what you might say is that bottom of the hill is where everything cools, and so the intent is to capture as much of that water where it does flood out the businesses, to have that water go to the river, recognizing that there are some other improvements around the city where we get uphill that may be improved at some point.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Director Port. I just wanted that point to be made. So if you use Councilor Wright, actually, and then Councilor Zede.
Thank you. I just wanted to say again that that we should be looking at ARPA as a funding source for this. So I support the project, but I would if I had to vote tonight, my vote would be no, but only because of the funding source.
Councilor Zede.
Yeah, I was the dissenting vote in committee, and I just want to say that, this is a great night to have this conversation coming off this is exactly how we get into this situation, right? This is $650,000 of free cash. My question for the city engineer was, if I could give you $650,000 for anything, because that's effectively what free cash is, would this be it? And I don't want to characterize his response, but my response is there are lots of things we talk about in the city, and yes, this is on a list somewhere. There are literally dozens of things, but I really struggle to see how, but for the waterfront park, we would be considering doing this at this time. And I get it, somebody can stand up and say, yeah, but we should do it because it's sequential, it makes sense, we won't have to dig up the park later, but getting the park, which everybody argued during the bonding discussion there, oh, it's CPA, it won't affect the general fund, don't worry about the taxes, it's just that's a different pot of money. This is exactly the kind of thing where it comes into play. And in a couple of weeks, we'll be bringing you another thing for Temp Power, where we'll be asking for more free cash in addition to money from the Waterfront Trust plus the Harbor Commission. So, and then next year in the budget, we'll need people to mow the lawn and do all the things it takes. So there is no project that is self-contained. And these are exactly, if we're serious about being very disciplined on the tax rate, it starts right now, today, with everything that comes through. This is an enormous amount. I haven't seen a free cash transfer this big myself in quite some time, other than to a stabilization fund to sort of just put it away for a rainy day. So, I hope it comes in for less if it passes. If it doesn't pass, I think, that may be what should happen so that we can, right this ship and get into the other things. And I'd rather see some streets get paved, for example, than spend this at this time. That's my perspective. Thank you.
Councilor Vogel.
I was going to not say anything, but that prompted me with the rather see streets being paved. I think we just had this discussion about free cash and what we're going to use it for and how it comes along. Anyway, I'm fully in support of it. I attended that meeting. I listened to the planning director. I listened to the city engineer. The timing seems right. I see that place flood all the time. Again, full disclosure, I have a business down there. And the engineer indicated that this would solve a lot of it in the meantime, and then go up State Street. It's going to be a bigger pipe and holding it. I think it's time to spend it. If the ARPA funds come through, then we got $650,000, or we still have, the ARPA money to pick another project to do.
Can I have a question to the folks that are on the ARPA committee? Do
Yes.
you all, since the three of you all are here, is that an option to discuss it tonight, whether to change the funding source? Does that need to be done in committee with the mayor?
It's going to come from there.
We're a contingent of the committee. We are not the committee, because it's actually the way the order was written, it's a mayor's committee, so we're not the only voting members. In other words, we can't just say, the three of us say, sure, and we also need an initiation of the expense by the administration. So,
I would agree.
But I think there is a plan or an idea, I don't know, with the holidays and everything, but that to reactivate it soon. I don't know, maybe Andrew could speak to that more.
The mayor's on board with bringing this committee back together. I would just say that these funds, they might not necessarily be completely, absolutely fungible, but they're very fungible, and that there is going to be plenty of things that we can find uses for. And if you would support this, if it were ARPA, you basically support it if it were free cash. With the amount of free cash and the amount of ARPA that we have right now, it's going to end up being fungible with the decisions that we make.
I like that word.
Okay.
Just this question.
Councilor Lane.
Does the output here just pour out onto where the public transient docks are there? If Director Port's on the line? Because it looks like it comes out right where...
It's not going to change that on that end. That end's going to remain the same.
Underneath.
It's
It comes out underneath.
So It's underneath all that.
Sorry, if I understand the question correctly, there's an existing outfall where it comes out, is that what the question was?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an existing outfall of the integrated width, so there's not a new opening in the bulkhead that's being created, or any impact on the docks, if that's the, if I understand the question. It's a little hard to hear.
Got it.
Okay. Further questions? All right.
Motion on the floor is to approve as amended. Transfer 139. Roll call.
Roll call.
Counsel McCauley.
No.
Counsel Preston.
Yes.
Counsel Vogel.
Yes?
Counsel Wallace.
No.
Counsel Wright.
No.
Counsel Zede.
No.
Counsel Cameron.
Yes.
Counsel Donahue.
Yes.
Counsel Khan.
Yes.
Counsel Lane.
No.
Counsel Shan.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-5.
Last two, motion to approve transfer 142, free cash 18,647 to Parklet Maintenance Fund.
Second.
Okay, so the Parklet Maintenance Fund was created about 4 months ago or so, and it is a fund designated for receipts of revenues related to parklets. However, we had a small timing issue where parklets started happening before the fund was created. So the funds that were paid in pre-creation of this fund went into the general fund and then eventually fell down into free cash. And when we established the fund, we had talked about trying to recoup that money, which Ethan is able to track to the penny, and put it in the fund because that's what it came from. And remember, the Parklet Maintenance Fund is designed to basically support the parklets. For example, to build up a balance so that when the parklets fail, the physical things fail, we can buy new ones and have the money. So it just so happened that amount was 18,647. That is why it's coming from free cash. Committee recommends 3-0.
Further discussion? Roll call.
Roll call on approving transfer 142. Counsel McCauley.
Yes.
Counsel Preston.
Yes.
Counsel Vogel.
Yes.
Counsel Wallace.
Yes.
Counsel Wright.
Yes.
Counsel Zede.
Yes.
Counsel Cameron.
Yes.
Counsel Donahue.
Yes.
Counsel Khan.
Yes.
Counsel Lane.
Yes.
And Counsel Shan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion to approve transfer 143, 1456 heavy-duty truck purchase.
Second?
So this is an internal transfer within the Sewer Enterprise Fund. It is not free cash. So they ordered a truck, which we had discussed during the budget cycle and CIP. The truck did finally come in, but it came in over by about $1,500. So they're doing an internal line transfer to support it. Committee recommended 3-0, your approval.
Further discussion? Roll call.
Approving transfer 143. Counsel McCauley.
Yes.
Counsel Preston.
Yes.
Counsel Vogel.
Yes.
Counsel Wallace.
Yes.
Counsel Wright.
Yes.
Counsel Zede.
Yes.
Counsel Cameron.
Yes.
Counsel Donahue.
Yes.
Counsel Khan.
Yes.
Counsel Lane.
Yes.
And Counsel Shan.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
That's it for items. Budget and Finance will be meeting on Thursday for our standing meeting. It is the last official scheduled one for the year and likely will be the last meeting of the year. And I just wanted to give you a quick heads up. We're going to try and do the waterfront paid, transfer 140 paid, that's the temporary power for the waterfront, the stabilization transfer, the three ordinances we have, and the one order, the three ordinances that we have. Basically, we're going to try and do everything but Low Street to clear the deck for the end of the year. When we come back in January, we're going to hit 59 Low Street hard, so I'm working to coordinate all that, and that will basically be where we pick up in January. The schedule will publish when the council schedule becomes available and we have a sense for when our standing meetings will be. And I will coordinate all the invitees, and if there's anything you would like to see or have, please let me know. And that's it for budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zade. Education.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. The Education Committee will have their last meeting of the year, and maybe forever. And so I'm looking at December 19th, which I know is close to the holidays. Otherwise, we could do December 5th, but maybe I'll bring cookies and treats and we'll make it fun. So if anyone else wants to join, we can make it committee of the whole and bring something in there. No, everyone would be invited to attend, but December 19th or 5th, and I'll email my colleagues and see what works better. Thank you.
All right, there is nothing in general government, license and permits.
Nothing for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Lane. Neighborhood and City Services.
Nothing to report other than we will be meeting a week from tomorrow to clean up a few items that are in committee.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Wallace. Planning and Development.
Nothing to report, but we will meet before the next meeting.
Okay, Public Safety.
Thank you, Council President. A motion to receive and file communication 447.
Second.
The Girl Scouts have withdrawn their application. They had a conflict and couldn't make it through. I just wanted to clean it up. So,
All right, roll call on receiving, filing, communication 447.
Counsel McCauley?
Yes.
Counsel Preston?
Yes.
Counsel Vogel?
Yes.
Counsel Wallace?
Yes.
Counsel Wright? Yes. Counsel Zede?
Yes.
Counsel Cameron?
Yes.
Counsel Donahue?
Yes.
Counsel Khan?
Yes.
Counsel Lane? And Counsel Shan?
Yes.
I'm going to say no because I like cookies.
I've got you.
motion to approve
got
Order
yours, yes.
393, holiday parking.
Second.
Thank you. So there's a motion to offer, as we've done in the past, free parking from the 18th to the 25th, and the kiosk will say from the citizens of Newburyport. Committee voted 3-0 to recommend it.
Discussion? Roll call.
Approving Order 393, Counsel McCauley?
Yes.
Counsel Preston?
Yes.
Counsel Vogel?
Yes.
Counsel Wallace?
Yes.
Counsel Wright?
Yes.
Counsel Zede?
Yes.
Counsel Cameron?
Yes.
Counsel Donahue?
Yes.
Counsel Khan?
Yes.
Counsel Lane? Yes. Counsel Shan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion to approve Ordinance 131.
Second.
This is an ordinance to add a 15-minute parking space on Pleasant Street, the first space on the southerly side after Hales Court. There's been some success of these 15-minute spots on Liberty Street as well as State Street. This is a spot that the parking department has asked for. They have a lot of tickets there. They have a lot of people, turnover, people scooching into Hales Court and blocking it off and all that. And they think taking one of these spots and making it a 15-minute spot will help with the turnover, decrease the tickets and the congestion and all of that. We recommended it 3-0.
Thank you, Councilor McCauley. Further discussion? Roll call.
Motion approved, first reading, Ordinance 131. Counsel McCauley?
Yes.
Counsel Preston?
Yes.
Counsel Vogel?
Yes.
Counsel Wallace?
Yes.
Counsel Wright?
Yes.
Counsel Zede?
No.
Counsel Cameron?
Yes.
Counsel Donahue?
Yes.
Counsel Khan?
Yes.
Counsel Lane?
Yes.
And Counsel Shan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Nothing further. Thank you.
McCauley. Councilor Vogel, Public Utilities.
Nothing to report.
Rules.
Motion to approve ordinance 128.
Second.
More or less as amended as it is in the packet.
Second.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah. So there's nothing more than I can add, especially in the next 6 minutes. We've all been at all these meetings, or most of us have filtered in and out of the meetings. I think all of the ideas that have come in have been captured, at least in the written order here. I would like to take a little bit of leeway that when we get this approved, that we can sit down with the clerk and kind of go through it to make sure that we did catch it all, because I think there's probably going to be some Scribner's errors and some minor pieces that may need to be changed, even though I've gone through it, and I know Councilor Shan has gone through it. I like it. I've read it again. I've kind of gone through it. I've heard all the concerns, and I think it's going to help us do a really good job. I really do. So we came out of committee 2-1.
Yeah, you're right.
There was 2 people at the committee.
No, it was 2-1.
It was 2-1?
I was there for the
I'm
second
sorry.
one. Yeah. It's
He
okay.
was on Zoom. He was 2-1.
Oh, Zoom, that's right.
No big deal.
Came out of committee 2-1.
Considering we have a hand coming up, I think we probably ought to let Councilor Wright do what he does.
Motion to go beyond our self-imposed time deadline.
Second.
Roll call.
Rat. Counsel McCauley?
Yes.
Counsel Preston?
Yes.
Counsel Vogel?
Yes.
Counsel Wallace?
Yes.
Counsel Wright?
Yes.
Counsel Zede?
Yes.
Counsel Cameron?
Yes.
Counsel Donahue?
Yes.
Counsel Khan?
Yes.
Counsel Lane?
Yes.
Counsel Lane?
Yes.
And Counsel Shan?
Yes. So,
may
Councilor Wallace, you
continue.
had your hand up.
Yes. Thank you, Council President. Yeah, I generally agree with these. At first, I was kind of iffy on the public works and the safety together, but now I understand that all the applications will be going to license and permit. So that's a huge load that would come off of that committee. Just a couple suggestions. The name for Committee on City Services, I was thinking could be Community Services. I think it's kind of like a nicer, softer touch. And then Public Works and Safety, infrastructure is another term that I was thinking of instead of Public Works, but that's just something to think about. The one thing that may be missing in here is kind of who covers like building grounds. Now maybe that's DPS, but I see schools is under government, or I should say buildings and grounds. So cemeteries, I almost would put that under the Committee on City Services because that has kind of a historical piece to it, and sometimes there are events there. I don't know if there's events there, but it seems like it's not just something to be maintained. And then my other thought too was the parks maintenance, and maybe that's something that could come later. I mean, that would be along the lines of also grounds. So I just want to make sure that we capture, make sure that the buildings are addressed, not just the school buildings, and that all the grounds are addressed. Thank you.
So I believe buildings are already under general government.
Right.
All municipal buildings are under general government.
If they're not assigned to somebody else.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, the city
Yeah.
city properties, does that include
Yes.
the grounds? Mm-hmm. Okay, and the school.
So did you want to offer up an amendment on the naming?
Yeah, why don't I start with the,
I wrote Public Works, Infrastructure, and Safety, you said?
I was just thinking, do I need to stand up?
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was thinking just infrastructure and safety is a thought. Maybe we can discuss that, but I do like the community services. I've seen that in other communities because it's kind of you can get your cultural piece and your social services all wrapped up. So maybe I will make a motion to amend Committee on City Services to Committee on Community Services.
Second.
That's it for that one,
You
just
want-
the community, the word
you
city
just-
to community.
Community services.
You don't want to do the other one?
Not yet.
Okay.
Second.
Okay.
I think Council Donahue seconded.
Do a roll call on that?
Okay, so we would be changing the name responsibilities of Committee on City Services to Committee on Community Services. Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
And just
Community it is.
point of order, I'm sure it'd just be Scrivener's, but in the body of the text, you would want to make it consistent. The Committee on Community Services shall be concerned with.
Right. We'll go through it.
Thank you.
I'm sure that would be.
Councilor Wallace, do you want to continue?
Yeah, I'm just curious to hear some discussion on if we like Public Works and Safety or if infrastructure instead of Public Works. You can't really get rid of the safety piece because that's kind of key, but just a thought.
Councilor Z?
Yeah, I like Public Works just because I think it's more general than infrastructure, but certainly includes infrastructure. So, I mean, to me, Public Works encompasses that and more, so I'd rather not make it narrower.
Gotcha.
I mean, Public Works would cover DPS highway, water, sewer, could be infrastructure, could also be other things they do.
Yep.
is my
So
thought.
public work and safety?
Yeah, for example, like snow plowing, right? That's, to me, is a public work. They do go out and they plow, they plow the snow. It's not infrastructure, but it fits under public works, but wouldn't under, that's like one example.
Yep.
So you want to make that amendment?
No, it's already.
No, I
No
think it's
change.
fine as it is. I mean, I'm saying I think it's okay as it is.
All right. Further discussion? It's late.
Okay.
All right.
We have a motion to approve first reading as amended.
Correct.
Roll call. Council McCauley?
Yes.
Council Preston?
Yes.
Council Vogel?
Yes.
Council Wallace?
Yes.
Council Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Z?
Yes.
Counselor Cameron.
Yes.
Counselor Donahue.
Yes.
Counselor Khan.
Yes.
Counselor Lane.
Yes.
Counselor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Nothing else to report?
Good of the order. Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, I'm going to ask for an executive session, next session, for a review of the 2016 Parks Report if it's not released beforehand. I think that the whole council should have the opportunity to see that, and I think that it's kind of the root of some of the things that are going on with conversations back and forth, and I would ask through the council president that we have that. Thank you.
For the end of the year. Agreed. Further, Councilor Lane.
I just want to wish Jane Snow a happy birthday, where it's her happy birthday today. Happy birthday. Thank you for being our supporter in all you do, being so tuned into our community.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Ms. Snow. Clerk Jones.
Could I be self-serving and say that I just certified the election on Monday? I didn't, we did. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank all the poll workers because of their pressure they were under and the job they did. The office, which has been tremendous, and the Board of Registrars, often not mentioned, but they put in long hours for little pay. So at the risk of sounding like I'm blowing my own horn, it was, when you certify an election, a midterm, it's a big deal.
Nice.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you very much.
I was a small part. I was part of it. It's a team effort, true team effort.
Motion to adjourn?
Roll call. Councilor Preston, I hope you feel better next time.
Okay, the last roll call. Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
And a pleasure being with you again. My grandfather.
We are adjourned.